In the vast expanse of our universe, there are secrets that defy logic, mysteries that shatter everything we thought we knew. What if some of the most unsettling theories about reality are rooted in truth? Theories so chilling, even the brightest minds can't explain them. From the eerie potential of parallel universes to the bizarre nature of time itself, science has uncovered ideas so profound they leave more questions than answers. These are not theories of fiction. They are theories that have baffled the greatest scientists of our time. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the unknown. The air is thick with the chill of a northern winter. In the vast, desolate landscape of Norway, nestled within the barren hills of the Danish countryside, lies a tale of intrigue, uncertainty, and tragedy. It was in this very remote, wintry expanse that King Charles XII of Sweden, one of Europe's most enigmatic and ambitious monarchs, met his end in 1718. His death has remained one of history's most enduring mysteries, surrounded by questions that, to this day, echo through the annals of time. On the evening of November 30th, 1718, as the winter winds howled across the fortifications of Fredriksten Castle, Charles XII was shot dead, at the height of his campaign against Norway. The young king, just 36 years old, had been waging war for nearly 2 decades, fighting for the expansion and preservation of his kingdom. His military genius was unquestioned, and his determination unyielding. He had led his army through bloody campaigns in Poland, Russia, and Turkey. Yet, on that fateful night, in the middle of a siege, he was struck down by a single, fatal bullet. But the question remains: was it the work of an enemy's shot, or did someone within his own ranks take his life? Was it murder or a tragic accident? Charles's death, a mere weeks before he was poised to complete his conquest of Norway, has cast a long shadow over his legacy. Official reports, written by those closest to him, claim that he was shot by a sniper from the enemy lines. But there are anomalies in these accounts that have never been fully explained, details that suggest this conclusion may not tell the whole story. For one, there is the curious matter of the trajectory of the bullet. It is said that the king was shot through a small, narrow window at the fortress. Yet, those who examined the evidence later argued that such a shot would have been extraordinarily difficult for an enemy sharpshooter, given the angle of the window and the distance between the king and the Norwegian lines. The bullet, they claimed, could not have come from where the enemy was positioned. Could it have been fired from within the castle? Perhaps, even by one of Charles's own men. The most puzzling part of the mystery is the autopsy conducted on the king's body. The results showed that the bullet wound was not, as many might assume, fatal in the typical sense. It had entered from the side of his skull and struck him in a way that would have been unlikely to kill immediately. Some argue that Charles was not even the intended target, but that the shot was meant for someone else, perhaps a bodyguard, or even another officer standing near the king at the time. Others suggest that the bullet's trajectory and location may indicate a deliberate attempt to silence the monarch quickly. What is even more chilling is the possibility that this could have been an assassination, carried out by those closest to him. For Charles XII had made many enemies during his reign, not just abroad, but also within his own court. His aggressive policies had alienated key figures in Sweden, and many viewed his obsession with war as both reckless and dangerous. Was his death the result of a conspiracy within the very heart of his kingdom? Some historians have raised the possibility that the king's own generals, worn down by years of relentless warfare, saw his death as the only way to end the seemingly endless conflict. In the eyes of some, Charles's death was a sacrifice to the greater good of Sweden, one that might allow the nation to seek peace and recovery after the staggering toll of war. Did those in charge of the king's military campaign, perhaps fearing the collapse of Sweden itself, take matters into their own hands? Was this an act of betrayal, or a tragic necessity. But there are other theories, far darker and more speculative. In the centuries since Charles's death, rumors have spread about a mysterious figure who might have played a role in his demise. Some claim that a shadowy assassin, hired by foreign powers threatened by Sweden's growing dominance, had infiltrated the castle. According to these theories, the assassin's precise shot was the work of a highly trained marksman from another nation, possibly Russia, who had an interest in bringing the Swedish king to an untimely end. Still, others believe that the king's death was not the work of any human hand at all, but something far more supernatural. Was Charles XII cursed, doomed from the moment he set out on his ambitious campaigns? The tales of his near-miraculous escapes from death during battles only fueled the mystique surrounding his final moments. Some suggest that, in the end, it was fate itself that sealed his doom, a punishment for his unrelenting ambition and his refusal to acknowledge the human cost of his wars. Could his death have been the result of some kind of divine retribution, or was it simply the tragic consequence of a man so driven by his desires that he overlooked his own mortality? For centuries, the death of Charles XII has remained a topic of heated debate. The official records say one thing, but the unanswered questions linger in the minds of those who seek the truth. How could a king, so adored by his people, so feared by his enemies, and so steadfast in his military pursuits, meet his end in such an enigmatic and controversial way? What if, even now, new evidence, perhaps hidden in some forgotten archive or uncovered through modern technology, could shed light on what truly happened that night? The answers remain elusive, and perhaps they always will. As we continue to delve into the events of that fateful evening in 1718, the mystery of King Charles XII's death invites us to wonder, was this a murder, an accident, or something more? What secrets are still buried in the icy grave of history, waiting to be uncovered? This is not just a tale of a king's death. It is a mystery that may never be solved. In the quiet, rolling hills of Devon, England, there is a place where nature seems to hold its breath, a place where, on the surface, all appears calm, yet beneath, something deeply unsettling remains. It is here, in the bitter cold of February 1855, that one of the most bizarre and haunting phenomena ever recorded in British history occurred: the Devil's Footprints. As dawn broke on that winter morning, residents of the small village of Exminster were confronted with a sight so strange that it would haunt their memories for decades. Across a stretch of frozen ground, over 100 miles of countryside, a trail of mysterious hoofprints, each about 3 to 4 inches in size, appeared to lead through snow-covered fields and rooftops. The prints seemed to be of some sort of creature, but not one ever seen before. They appeared to move with an impossible fluidity, crossing rivers, climbing walls, and even jumping onto rooftops. Most disconcerting of all, they were made by a creature whose form defied explanation. At first glance, the prints looked as though they could belong to a large animal. Yet, as the villagers examined them more closely, it became clear that the tracks did not belong to any known creature. The impressions were of a shape that seemed almost human, but not entirely. They were strangely uniform, as if they were produced by a creature with an unnatural gait. Worse yet, the prints appeared to be made by something that could defy the laws of physics, crossing obstacles that should have been insurmountable for any earthly being. As the news spread across Devon and beyond, the strange phenomenon was quickly labeled the Devil's Footprints. The idea of a supernatural being leaving a trail across the land was, to many, the only possible explanation for what had been witnessed. In a time when belief in the supernatural was deeply embedded in local culture, the suggestion that the devil himself might have wandered across the landscape was not as far-fetched as it may seem to modern ears. Yet, as with any mystery, the explanations that followed were varied and far from conclusive. Some theorists have suggested that the prints could have been the work of an escaped animal, perhaps a kangaroo or some other exotic creature that had somehow found its way into the British countryside. There were reports that a traveling circus had passed through the area around the time of the phenomenon, which led some to believe that a kangaroo might have been responsible for the strange markings. However, skeptics quickly pointed out that a kangaroo, or any other animal, would have left a different set of prints, more irregular, more varied in size and shape. And of course, there was the question of how such an animal would have been able to leap across rooftops and leave consistent hoofprints in places no animal could easily reach. Another theory, which some believed might be the more plausible explanation, revolved around a series of deliberate hoaxes. Perhaps someone, possibly a prankster or a group of mischievous individuals, had created the footprints as a way of frightening the villagers, or even as an experiment in creating a mystery. While this might explain some of the oddities, it does little to clarify the persistence of the prints in places where no human could have left them, or the strange way in which the marks appeared to stretch across vast distances without any sign of disruption. Then, there were those who clung to a more chilling and supernatural interpretation. The possibility that what had been witnessed was, indeed, the work of the devil, or at least some form of otherworldly being. Could it be that the hoofprints, so meticulously consistent in their shape, were a sign of something far darker, something that could not be easily explained by logic, science, or conventional reason? In the years following the event, various reports surfaced of other strange and inexplicable occurrences happening in the area. Some claimed that the devil's footprints were part of a larger pattern of paranormal activity that had been unfolding throughout England at the time, linking the phenomenon to darker forces at play. But the most intriguing aspect of this mystery is the sheer lack of any definitive explanation. Despite numerous investigations, none could provide a concrete answer. No one could trace the origins of the marks or offer a plausible explanation for how they could have appeared in such a calculated yet wholly mysterious way. In fact, it's not just the footprints themselves that baffle scientists and historians. It's the questions that continue to linger. Why did the footprints appear only in certain areas? Why were they so oddly uniform, yet so otherworldly in nature? And perhaps most unsettling of all, if the devil, or something like it, left these prints in the snow, then what else might be out there in the shadows, lurking just beyond the edge of our understanding? Despite all the investigations, including a thorough examination by a number of scientists at the time, no plausible or scientifically accepted explanation has been found to fully account for the phenomenon. Some even went so far as to claim that it was the result of some unexplained atmospheric or magnetic phenomenon that could distort the physical world in strange ways. But such theories, though tantalizing, remain speculative and unproven. It is precisely this lack of clarity that continues to fuel the mystery of the devil's footprints. With no clear answer, the question lingers. Could there be forces at work that exist beyond the limits of our comprehension? Is this one of many supernatural occurrences that humanity has only begun to understand? Or is it simply the result of an elaborate hoax designed to make us question what we know about reality? As we move forward in our exploration of the unexplained, we are left with the unsettling sense that perhaps some mysteries are not meant to be solved, at least not yet. The devil's footprints serve as a haunting reminder that the world is full of phenomena that defy easy explanation, and that even in this age of technology and scientific discovery, there are still things that lie beyond our grasp, hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. What are we truly capable of understanding, and what will remain forever hidden from us? Perhaps in the end, some mysteries, like those strange hoofprints in the snow, are simply too enigmatic to solve. In the late autumn of 1896, as the crisp air began to settle across the United States, something extraordinary, something unexplainable, began to unfold across the skies. It was an event that would leave a trail of confusion, speculation, and wonderment, echoing through the annals of history, but one that never fully found its place within the established narrative of the time. As the sun sank lower over the small towns and farmlands, whispers began to spread of strange, glowing airships flying high above the earth. These weren't the familiar blimps or dirigibles of the day. They were something else entirely. Shapes so unfamiliar, their very presence defied all conventional understanding. On the night of November 17, 1896, a report in the San Francisco Examiner detailed a mysterious airship sighting near Sacramento. Witnesses described an object in the sky, suspended in the air, its outline indistinct and impossible to describe with any certainty. Some spoke of it resembling a cigar, others likened it to a strange, luminous craft that seemed to flicker and glow with an ethereal light. But it wasn't just one or two people who saw this oddity. Over the next several months, reports of similar sightings began to flood in from across the United States: California, Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, and even as far north as Ontario, Canada. These strange airships were not just random sightings, but rather a phenomenon, one that seemed to have its own trajectory, its own path, and its own purpose. They moved unpredictably, sometimes hovering, sometimes darting across the sky with remarkable speed. Their appearance was always accompanied by a strange, almost otherworldly silence. Despite the visible craft, no sound seemed to emanate from them. What then were these mysterious ships? The majority of reports indicated a similar shape: long, cylindrical objects, sometimes described as cigar-shaped, sometimes as enormous, luminous craft with rotating propellers or other mechanical appendages. The mysterious nature of the sightings led many to speculate that perhaps they were some sort of advanced military vehicles or even experimental aircrafts from foreign nations. Was it possible that these sightings were the work of a secret government project, one that had yet to be unveiled to the public? After all, the late 19th century was a time of rapid technological advancements, from the telephone to the electric light bulb. Could the airships have been prototypes of what we would later come to recognize as airplanes? But as more and more reports continued to surface, reports from seemingly credible individuals, including farmers, businessmen, and even scientists, the mystery deepened. If these were experimental airships, why were they appearing across such a vast expanse of land, moving in ways that defied the mechanical understanding of the time? Why were they often seen at night, appearing and disappearing without warning, and why were they seemingly impervious to conventional methods of identification? The enigma only intensified as the sightings progressed through the winter of 1896 and into the early months of 1897. In January of 1897, in Aurora, Texas, an account emerged that would forever be etched into the annals of airship lore. According to the story, a mysterious airship had crashed on a local farm, its wreckage spread across the landscape. Witnesses described a small craft, its metal twisted and scorched from the crash, and they claimed they had found the body of a small humanoid being, which was said to have been burned beyond recognition. This peculiar event was reported by a local newspaper, and while many dismissed it as a hoax or an exaggeration, others still point to it as one of the most compelling pieces of evidence in the airship mystery. But what did all of these reports mean? Were they merely the product of overactive imaginations or mass hysteria, or was there something more to the story, something that modern science has yet to explain? One of the most widely accepted explanations was that the sightings were simply a result of new technologies in aviation. At the time, many inventors were experimenting with lighter-than aircraft, and the airship sightings might have been the result of early tests. But why were these objects always so elusive? Why were they often seen only by a small group of people and never fully captured by the press? Some skeptics argued that the sightings were simply the result of people misidentifying conventional objects in the sky, such as weather balloons or military test flights. But how does one explain the eerie silence that accompanied these ships, or the accounts of people who swore they saw them fly at great speeds, defying the known limitations of aircrafts of that era? Then there were those who began to entertain more unconventional theories. Some suggested the possibility of extraterrestrial visitation. Could these airships have been sent from other worlds? The fact that they appeared in such a mysterious and unpredictable manner seemed to support this idea. After all, if these were simply early forms of human-made technology, why had they never been successfully duplicated or properly documented? In an era before the widespread use of radio and modern communication technology, it is difficult to imagine how such an elaborate hoax could have been perpetrated over such a large geographic area. Could the sightings have been a form of collective misinterpretation of natural phenomena? Or were they perhaps connected to secret government experiments, projects so advanced that they remain classified to this day? One particularly curious theory emerged from the fringes of early aviation enthusiasts and speculative thinkers. Some believed the airships were part of a vast conspiracy to hide the truth of an advanced, undisclosed civilization. What if, just below the surface of society, there existed a group of people or organizations with technology far ahead of what was publicly known? As we stand today, over a century after the strange airship sightings of 1896 to 1897, the mystery remains unsolved. No definitive evidence has ever been found to confirm the true nature of those mysterious craft, and yet the stories continue to captivate the imagination of those who wonder. Were they the product of an early, failed attempt at flight, or were they something more? Something still beyond our understanding? We may never know the truth, but the question lingers in the air, as elusive and mysterious as the ships themselves. What if, in the quiet spaces between known history and unexplained phenomena, there still exist stories waiting to be told, stories that would forever alter our understanding of the world we live in? It was the night of December 1st, 1948, when the quiet of Somerton Beach, just south of Adelaide in South Australia, was shattered by the discovery of an unsettling mystery, a mystery that still, decades later, defies any satisfying explanation. A man's body was found lying in the sand, neatly positioned with his legs stretched out in front of him. He was well dressed in a suit, though there was nothing to suggest who he was. His pockets were empty, except for a small scrap of paper with 2 words: Taman Shud. The case would soon become known as the Taman Shud case, one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in modern history. And yet, the strange circumstances surrounding this man's death would only deepen with each new discovery. The body was found by a passerby, who reported it to the authorities. At first glance, it seemed like a typical case of someone who had perhaps died from natural causes, maybe even a heart attack. But there were no identification papers, no wallet, no clues to the man's identity. His clothing, although neat, showed no signs of distress or struggle. His posture was almost too deliberate, as if he had calmly laid himself down to rest on the beach. Even stranger, there were no immediate signs of injury or foul play. It was as if he had simply collapsed and died, but no one could say why or what had caused it. The investigation that followed seemed to open more questions than answers. The first clue came when police searched the man's clothing and found the small scrap of paper hidden in a fob pocket, tucked neatly inside a pair of pants. The paper contained 2 words in bold, neatly written script: Taman Shud, a phrase that, to the authorities, meant nothing at all. But the curious thing about Taman Shud was that it wasn't just any phrase. It was a reference to the final words of a famous Persian poetry collection, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The words translated roughly to ended or finished, as if the person had known their own life was coming to a close. Soon, the mystery deepened further. The police traced the paper to a copy of the Rubaiyat, a rare edition, found in the glove compartment of a car, locked and abandoned. Inside the book was a coded message, written in ink, with strange characters that didn't correspond to any known alphabet or cipher. Who had left these clues, and what did they mean? The plot thickened when it was discovered that the man had no identification. There were no records of him, no missing person reports that matched his description. It was as if he had appeared out of nowhere. His fingerprints came back unrecognizable, showing no matches in any existing databases. In fact, the case was so baffling that it eventually made headlines around the world. How could someone so thoroughly erased from the system have died under such mysterious circumstances? But the question on everyone's mind remained, who was the man on the beach? And why had he left such cryptic clues behind? Several theories began to circulate. Some suggested he was the victim of a Cold War-era espionage operation. This theory was supported by the discovery that the book from which the Taman Shud paper came had connections to the world of intelligence operations. The code written in the book was believed by some to be a form of cryptography, perhaps a message meant for an agent or a double agent. Was this man a spy who had been killed or discarded by his handlers? And if so, why leave such an enigmatic trail for authorities to follow? Others believed the case to be connected to a possible love affair gone wrong, or even a tragic suicide. Some thought the Rubaiyat and the cryptic messages were an indication of the man's despair, a final gesture before ending his life. Could this be the work of a troubled mind? A man who had used obscure references to leave a message for the world? The notion seemed plausible. After all, the Rubaiyat had been a popular, albeit unusual text for people during the mid-20th century. But there were inconsistencies in these theories. If the man had simply been a suicide, why had he gone to such lengths to erase his identity? And if he were an agent or spy, why had he died so publicly, on a quiet beach, where no one seemed to notice his presence until it was too late? Furthermore, no one could explain why the body showed no signs of the physical distress that would be expected in a case of poisoning, which many initially suspected. The toxicology reports came back inconclusive, with no traces of poison found in the man's system. Another peculiar detail emerged in the investigation. A witness came forward claiming to have seen the man on the night he died, or at least a man who resembled him, walking with a woman shortly before his body was discovered. The woman was never identified, and her possible connection to the case remains unclear. Could she have been involved in his death, or was she merely a passerby? As the years went on, the case seemed to grow colder, but the questions remained. Who was the man? Why did he leave such cryptic messages behind? Was he the victim of a sinister plot, or merely a man who chose to leave a mysterious legacy in his final moments? More than 70 years after that fateful discovery on Somerton Beach, the Taman Shud case remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. The cryptic messages, the identity of the man, the possible connection to espionage or even a tragic love story, all of these elements continue to fascinate and puzzle investigators, historians, and enthusiasts alike. Some say the mystery will never be solved, that the answers have long since slipped through the cracks of history. But others continue to search for clues, piecing together the fragments of this strange and haunting case. Perhaps one day, the full truth will come to light. Or perhaps, as so often happens with the greatest mysteries, the answers will remain hidden forever, leaving us to wonder about the life and death of the man on the beach. Forever. What was the truth behind the Taman Shud case? What secrets did that man carry with him to his grave? And is it possible that there are still pieces of the puzzle waiting to be uncovered? Imagine, if you will, a sprawling city by the Mediterranean Sea, bathed in the warm glow of a setting sun. The scent of salt water mingles with the sounds of the bustling harbor. In the heart of this vibrant metropolis, nestled among grand marble structures, lies a place unlike any other, a sanctuary for the mind. This is Alexandria, the great intellectual capital of the ancient world, where knowledge from across the known civilizations converges and flourishes. And at the center of it all, the Library of Alexandria, an awe-inspiring repository of the world's most revered texts, a place where scrolls and manuscripts from every corner of the ancient world were gathered, translated, and studied. It was not just a library, but a symbol of the pursuit of knowledge itself, a beacon of enlightenment in an age shrouded by myth and superstition. The Library of Alexandria was founded in the 3rd century BC under the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, during a time when Egypt was a powerful kingdom in the eastern Mediterranean. The ambition was simple yet profound: to collect all the world's knowledge and preserve it for future generations. Scholars from far and wide, Greece, Persia, India, Egypt, and beyond, traveled to Alexandria, seeking knowledge and contributing their own writings to the ever-expanding collection. It is said that the library housed upwards of 400,000 scrolls, containing the works of great philosophers, mathematicians, and scientists of the ancient world. It was the intellectual heart of the ancient Mediterranean. But as much as we know about the Library of Alexandria, it is also a place defined by what we don't know. Despite its historical importance, the fate of the library, and the treasure trove of knowledge it contained, remains shrouded in mystery. Many theories have been proposed, and yet no one can say with certainty what happened to it. What caused this magnificent institution to vanish? Did it burn to the ground in a catastrophic event, or was its knowledge slowly lost to time and neglect? The story of the Library of Alexandria is one of lost knowledge and lost potential, a tantalizing glimpse into what could have been. The first recorded destruction of the library, and the most widely believed event, occurred during Julius Caesar's siege of Alexandria in 48 BC. During the conflict, Caesar's forces set fire to the ships in the harbor, and the flames spread to parts of the city, including the library. The extent of the damage is still debated, but it is generally accepted that a significant portion of the library's collection was lost in the fire. It is said that the library never fully recovered from this catastrophe, and the intellectual center of Alexandria began to decline. However, some scholars argue that the library may have continued to exist in some form for centuries after Caesar's attack. While many scrolls and texts were undoubtedly destroyed, it is possible that parts of the library's collection survived the fire, perhaps hidden away or relocated to other parts of Alexandria. It is believed that the library may have been housed in different locations within the city, so even if one structure was destroyed, others may have remained intact. As if this were not enough, a second blow to the library's survival came in the 3rd century AD during the reign of Emperor Aurelian. His forces fought to recapture Alexandria from Queen Zenobia of Palmyra, and in the chaos that followed, parts of the city, along with the library, were once again caught in the flames. While the exact fate of the library during this period is unclear, many scholars suggest that this second fire may have led to further destruction, perhaps even the ultimate demise of the library. Yet, some insist that the library's end was not as sudden or violent as these events suggest. There are alternative theories that the library's decline was gradual. Its books and scrolls slowly dispersed or lost over time as the cultural and intellectual focus of the ancient world shifted away from Alexandria. The rise of Christianity in the 4th century AD brought with it a shift in intellectual priorities, and some believe that the library's destruction was part of a larger cultural transition. The closing of the pagan temples, the destruction of ancient shrines, and the rise of new religious and political ideologies could have led to the neglect or even deliberate destruction of the library's collections. But no matter which theory you subscribe to, one thing is clear. The loss of the Library of Alexandria was not just a physical event, but an intellectual tragedy. The knowledge contained within its walls, scientific, philosophical, and literary, was without a doubt some of the most advanced thinking of its time. The works of Euclid, Archimedes, and Pythagoras, the teachings of Aristotle and Plato, medical texts, astronomical observations, and detailed maps of the known world, these were the treasures of the library. The loss of these works set back human progress by centuries, and some scholars argue that it hindered the advancement of science, philosophy, and even the arts for generations. But the question that lingers is not just what was lost, but what we might have discovered if that knowledge had survived. Could the scientific revolution have begun earlier? Could we have solved the mysteries of the cosmos centuries before Copernicus and Galileo? Could the world have experienced an intellectual and cultural flourishing far beyond what we know today? As we look back at the Library of Alexandria, there is a sense of awe at what might have been. What if the key to understanding the universe, our place in it, the laws that govern it, and the very fabric of reality itself, was lost in the ashes of history? And perhaps most chillingly of all, could there be other lost repositories of knowledge that we have yet to discover? There are, in fact, persistent rumors of ancient texts and scrolls hidden away, waiting to be uncovered. For centuries, explorers and archaeologists have scoured the ruins of Alexandria and its surrounding areas, hoping to find remnants of the lost library. While no definitive discovery has been made, tantalizing clues have surfaced over the years. Some scholars point to the discovery of ancient papyri in the Egyptian desert, which some believe could be fragments of the lost library. Others speculate that secret caches of knowledge may still exist, hidden in the tombs and burial sites of long-forgotten scholars. One such theory posits that the knowledge lost in the Library of Alexandria did not vanish entirely. Instead, it may have been preserved in other, lesser-known libraries or private collections, hidden away from the eyes of the world. Could these works have been safeguarded by a select group of scholars, passed down through the generations in secret? Could the true heirs of the library still exist, holding the key to the mysteries of the ancient world? Moreover, some have suggested that the loss of the Library of Alexandria was not a simple accident of history, but a deliberate act, an attempt to control knowledge and power. Throughout history, those in power have often sought to suppress knowledge that could challenge their authority. Could the destruction of the library have been part of a larger, calculated effort to prevent the spread of knowledge that could disrupt the established order? As we continue to search for answers, the legend of the Library of Alexandria serves as both a cautionary tale and a source of endless fascination. The mysteries of the ancient world, buried beneath layers of time and history, remind us of the fragility of knowledge and the vast, unexplored territories of human understanding. What we have lost is still lost, and what remains hidden, whether in the ruins of Alexandria or elsewhere, may one day reveal answers to questions we have yet to ask. Until then, we are left to wonder, what might we have discovered if the Library of Alexandria had survived? And what, if anything, might we still uncover from the depths of the past, waiting to illuminate the future? The secrets of the ancient library may still be out there, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. In the thick, untamed forests of northern Tennessee, nestled near the small rural town of Adams, lies a place of eerie legend and dark history. The Bell Witch Cave, as it is now known, is shrouded in mystery and has captivated the curious for over 2 centuries. The cave itself is tucked into the side of a rugged hill, partially hidden beneath a veil of moss-draped trees and thick underbrush. To the untrained eye, it might seem like any other natural formation, an ordinary limestone cave, but it is far from that. Over the years, it has become synonymous with one of America's most chilling and enduring paranormal mysteries. The story of the Bell Witch is a tale that intertwines folklore, tragedy, and the supernatural. It begins in the early 1800s, when the Bell family moved to the area and settled on a farm near what is now known as Bell Witch Cave. The patriarch of the family, John Bell, along with his wife, Lucy, and their children, were no strangers to the hardships of frontier life. But their quiet existence would soon be disrupted by something that no earthly explanation could satisfy. It began, as many ghost stories do, with small disturbances. At first, it was little more than strange sounds, rattling chains, knocking on doors, and faint whispers in the night. But soon, the phenomena escalated. The Bell family reported hearing footsteps in the house, doors opening on their own, and the eerie sound of a disembodied voice laughing in the darkness. The voice would often speak to them, taunting them with cryptic messages and, at times, threatening them with violence. As the haunting grew in intensity, it began to focus on one member of the family in particular, Betty Bell, the youngest daughter. She was often seen in a state of distress, writhing in pain as though some invisible force was tormenting her. The attacks became more aggressive, pulling her hair, scratching her face, and even slapping her across the room. These bizarre events were not just limited to the family home but began to extend to the area surrounding the farm, including the mysterious cave that lay nearby. Locals began to whisper of a malevolent spirit that had taken residence near the Bell homestead. This spirit, known as the Bell Witch, was said to be the restless soul of a woman named Kate Batts, a neighbor who had reportedly been wronged by John Bell in some way. According to local legend, Kate had placed a curse on him and his family, seeking revenge for an unknown slight. Whether or not Kate Batts was truly responsible for the haunting is unclear, but her name remains forever linked with the Bell Witch legend. Over the following months, the haunting grew more powerful and more terrifying. The Bell family sought help from spiritualists and local authorities, but no one seemed able to explain the strange occurrences. Some suggested it was a case of mass hysteria, while others believed the family had fallen victim to a malicious poltergeist. But as the phenomena intensified, it became impossible to dismiss the events as mere superstition or coincidence. The haunting reached its peak when John Bell, the family patriarch, fell gravely ill. His condition worsened, and it was said that the Bell Witch was responsible, using her spectral powers to weaken him. After months of suffering, John Bell died in 1820 under mysterious circumstances. His death was sudden and inexplicable, and many believed that the Bell Witch had finally claimed her ultimate victory. In the wake of his death, the haunting seemed to subside, but it did not entirely disappear. The legend of the Bell Witch lingered, and the cave, where the Bell family had reported strange noises and disturbances, remained a focal point of the mystery. The Bell Witch Cave, in particular, became known as the epicenter of the supernatural events. Visitors to the site have long reported unsettling experiences, whispers, strange lights, and a palpable sense of dread in the air. Those who venture into the cave often speak of an oppressive atmosphere, as if something unseen is watching them. Some claim to feel an inexplicable chill, even in the warmth of summer, or to hear faint whispers that seem to echo off the stone walls. Despite these unsettling sensations, many continue to visit the cave, drawn by the enduring legend of the Bell Witch and the desire to experience its mysteries for themselves. In the years that followed the Bell family's experiences, the haunting of the Bell Witch became more than just a local legend. It grew into a nationally recognized story, attracting attention from paranormal investigators, skeptics, and curious travelers. Over time, the Bell Witch Cave itself became an increasingly popular destination for those seeking to understand, or perhaps witness, what had transpired so long ago. But as the years passed, the mystery only deepened. For centuries, the true nature of the Bell Witch has been the subject of much speculation. Some believe the haunting was the result of an actual supernatural presence, a vengeful spirit that tormented the Bell family in retaliation for some wrong. The most widely accepted theory is that the Bell Witch was the ghost of Kate Batts, a woman whose animosity toward the Bell family was said to have driven her to curse them in life and torment them in death. Others, however, argue that the haunting may have been a case of poltergeist activity, where the disturbances were actually the result of repressed emotions or psychic energy emanating from the Bell family themselves. In this interpretation, the Bell Witch was not a spirit at all, but rather a manifestation of the family's collective fear and guilt. But despite these various explanations, the Bell Witch's true identity and motivations remain elusive. The Bell Witch Cave, still standing in the Tennessee countryside, remains a symbol of the mystery. Its dark, winding passages, its damp air, and its sense of foreboding seem to hold the secrets of the past, secrets that have yet to be fully uncovered. What, then, are we to make of the Bell Witch? Is it the lingering spirit of a woman wronged, seeking retribution from beyond the grave? Or is it the product of fear, folklore, and the collective imagination of those who lived in a time when the boundaries between the supernatural and the natural world were often blurred? And what of the cave itself? Could it be that the Bell Witch still haunts its depths, waiting for a new generation to uncover its secrets? Or is it simply a place of history, where the echoes of the past have left behind only whispers and shadows? As the years pass and the legend of the Bell Witch endures, one thing is certain: the mystery remains unsolved. The Bell Witch Cave stands as a testament to the unknown, a reminder that some stories, some mysteries, are never fully explained. Perhaps, deep within its darkened corridors, the answers still lie hidden, waiting for those brave enough to seek them out. Or perhaps, as many believe, the Bell Witch's true nature is a riddle that will remain unsolved forever, an enigma locked away in the shadows of time. The questions linger, unanswered. What force tormented the Bell family all those years ago? And what does the Bell Witch Cave hold within its walls? The mystery, it seems, may never be fully understood, but it continues to haunt the imagination, as elusive and as terrifying as ever. In the early summer of 1828, a strange figure appeared on the streets of Nuremberg, Germany. A young man, disoriented, confused, and unable to speak clearly. He appeared seemingly out of nowhere, walking slowly through the town with a piece of paper clutched in his hand. The paper, it seemed, had been hastily written in a scrawl, bearing a cryptic message. On it was a simple, chilling statement: "I want to be a cavalryman like my father." This was the first public appearance of Kaspar Hauser, a name that would go on to become one of the most puzzling in European history. No one knew who he was, where he had come from, or what had brought him to Nuremberg. His appearance raised a multitude of questions that have yet to be answered, even after nearly 2 centuries. At the time, it was an unsettling sight. A young man, barely able to speak, dressed in ragged clothes, and looking as though he had never seen the outside world. He seemed out of place, like someone who had been trapped in isolation for much of his life. And in many ways, that was exactly what he had endured, though the details of his past were anything but clear. Kaspar Hauser was taken in by the citizens of Nuremberg, who were initially sympathetic toward him. His strange behavior and lack of basic knowledge of the world around him raised suspicions. He could not recognize the simplest of objects: trees, animals, even the light of day itself. He was physically strong, but his mental state appeared to be that of a much younger child. Most disturbing of all, he seemed to have no memory of his life before the moment he had appeared in Nuremberg. With no known family, no clear past, and no explanation for his condition, the people of Nuremberg quickly took to asking one crucial question: who was Kaspar Hauser? It wasn't long before rumors began to spread. The boy's origins became the subject of intense speculation, and theories about his true identity began to surface. Some believed that he had been locked away in a dark, isolated cell for most of his life, kept from the world by an unknown figure or group. Others suggested he had been a royal heir, secretly hidden away for reasons that remained a mystery. As he began to recover from his early shock, Hauser's behavior became even more intriguing. He started to speak more clearly, although his speech was still disjointed and childlike. He would describe the strange, windowless room in which he had spent most of his life, the only companions being a man who would feed him and occasionally offer him water. Hauser claimed to have spent his youth in complete isolation, with no human contact, except for the man who had kept him confined. But who was the mysterious figure who had locked him away? And why had he kept Kaspar in such isolation? Was it possible that Hauser's family had deliberately hidden him from the world, perhaps to protect him, or for some more nefarious purpose? The mystery only deepened when Hauser began to reveal snippets of his past, stories that seemed almost too fantastical to be believed. He spoke of being taken from a dark prison cell and brought to Nuremberg, where he had been left to wander in the streets. He claimed to have been raised by someone who would feed him but never speak to him. His only knowledge of the outside world seemed to come from his limited exposure to the light of day and the occasional brief moments of contact with his captor. These accounts were contradictory, and as time passed, the questions surrounding his origins only multiplied. Why had Hauser been kept in such a manner? Who had imprisoned him, and for how long had he been held captive? Some speculated that he had been a royal child, perhaps the son of a noble or even a member of a royal family. After all, he had an unusual air about him, a certain nobility in his manner, despite his rough upbringing. Could he have been the heir to a throne, hidden away for some obscure political reason? Some believed that his appearance was no accident. He had been carefully placed in Nuremberg to set in motion a series of events that could eventually lead to a revelation of his true identity. As Hauser's story began to gain widespread attention, new theories emerged. Some speculated that Kaspar was the product of a secret royal family, hidden away for his own safety. This theory gained traction in the years following his death when some suggested that he might have been the legitimate heir to the throne of a German duchy. Others believed that Hauser had been the victim of an elaborate conspiracy designed to keep him out of the public eye, perhaps to prevent a political scandal from unfolding. Theories abounded, but none could ever fully explain the truth behind Kaspar Hauser's origins. In the midst of all this speculation, something even more mysterious occurred. Hauser began to exhibit strange behavior. He claimed to have visions of the past, of a man he had never met. He spoke of the time he had spent in a dark room, as though he were trying to remember things long buried in his subconscious. But what was truly puzzling was the fact that, despite his increasing knowledge of the world around him, Hauser's memories seemed to shift and change, as though he were caught between two realities, one that was rooted in the past and another in the present. Over the course of the next few years, Hauser's life became more and more enigmatic. He was involved in multiple incidents that raised questions about his mental stability. At one point, Hauser was mysteriously stabbed in what appeared to be an assassination attempt. The assailant, however, was never found, and the circumstances surrounding the attack remained unclear. Was it an attempt on his life by someone who feared his true identity would be revealed? Or was it simply a desperate act by someone seeking to silence him? Despite the mounting intrigue and speculation surrounding Hauser, his life was tragically short-lived. In 1833, at the age of just 21, he died under strange circumstances. He had been found lying in a pool of his own blood, a wound on his chest. The exact cause of his death remains a matter of debate. Some believe it was a suicide, others that it was an assassination orchestrated by those who wanted to keep him silent. To this day, the true identity of Kaspar Hauser remains one of the most perplexing mysteries of the 19th century. Was he truly a noble heir, hidden away to protect his life, or was he simply a victim of a cruel experiment? Was his past the result of a conspiracy, or was he a troubled young man who had created his own elaborate fantasy? Despite decades of investigation and numerous theories, no definitive answers have emerged. The questions surrounding his origins and death remain as unresolved as ever. Kaspar Hauser's legacy endures, not only as a tragic figure, but also as a symbol of the unknown. What was his true story? What secrets did he carry with him, and what truths were buried along with him in his untimely death? As we reflect on Kaspar Hauser's life, the mystery lingers in the air, like an unfinished puzzle. The search for answers may never end, but perhaps that is the most fitting tribute to a story so strange, so elusive, and so full of uncertainty. What if the truth of Kaspar Hauser's life was never meant to be revealed? Could the answer lie just beyond our reach, forever concealed in the fog of history? It was a bleak October evening in 1849 when one of America's greatest literary minds was found lying unconscious in a gutter on the streets of Baltimore. Edgar Allan Poe, the man who gave the world tales of madness, mystery, and the macabre, was in his final hours, his life as shrouded in mystery as many of the stories he penned. The details of his death remain as elusive as the dark characters he created, and nearly 175 years later, his passing is still one of the most enduring mysteries in literary history. In the days leading up to Poe's death, he had been in a state of confusion, disoriented and delirious, but there was little clarity on what had brought him to this tragic end. He had been found in a state of near collapse, barely coherent, muttering phrases that made little sense. His clothes were disheveled, and he appeared to have been wandering the streets for some time before he was discovered. When he was found, he could barely speak, and his condition was so grave that he was immediately taken to a nearby hospital, where he passed away 4 days later, on October 7th, 1849. The cause of Edgar Allan Poe's death is officially listed as congestion of the brain, a vague and somewhat ambiguous diagnosis that does little to explain the strange circumstances surrounding his final days. Yet, even with this official diagnosis, the mystery of his death has only deepened. Was this simply the result of an illness, a drinking binge, or some other natural cause? Or was there something more sinister at play? Theories about the death of Edgar Allan Poe have abounded since the day he was found in that gutter. Some suggest that Poe's demise was due to a common affliction of the time, alcoholism. Poe, known for his bouts of depression and his personal struggles with alcohol, was often seen in states of intoxication. Many point to his previous history of drinking, which had at times led him to erratic behavior and periods of mental instability. Perhaps it was simply the cumulative effect of years of self-destructive behavior that led to his sudden collapse. But this explanation feels too simplistic for many who have pondered the circumstances surrounding Poe's final moments. After all, Poe was known to have been sober for several months before his death. He had even been working on a new writing project, his mind sharp and focused in the days leading up to his sudden collapse. He had been traveling to visit a woman named Sarah Helen Whitman, with whom he had hoped to rekindle a relationship. There were no signs that Poe had been in the throes of another destructive drinking binge. So, what then could have caused the rapid decline in his health, and why did he show no signs of improvement even after he was hospitalized? The mystery of Poe's death deepens further when we consider the peculiar details of his final days. In the hours before his collapse, Poe was reportedly found in a state of incoherent delirium. He was seen speaking in strange, disjointed sentences, and even his behavior was erratic. He is said to have called out the name Reynolds repeatedly, a name that has never been fully explained. Was this a reference to someone he knew, or was it a figment of his troubled mind? Some researchers have speculated that Poe might have been suffering from some form of psychological trauma, possibly related to his early life experiences or the various hardships he endured throughout his adult years. The most tantalizing and darkest theory, however, is one that points to murder. Could Poe have been murdered? The idea is not as far-fetched as it might initially seem, especially when we consider the state of his health when he was found. Theories of foul play have persisted for generations, with many pointing to the mysterious circumstances surrounding his final days. But who would want to harm Edgar Allan Poe, and why? One of the most compelling theories posits that Poe's death may have been the result of couping, a form of electoral fraud that was not uncommon in the 19th century. In those days, political bosses would often force people, sometimes under duress or violence, to vote multiple times in exchange for money, alcohol, or other incentives. The theory suggests that Poe, found in an intoxicated and confused state on the streets of Baltimore, may have been a victim of such a scheme. If Poe had been coerced into voting several times for a political candidate, he might have been drugged or otherwise manipulated in a way that left him vulnerable. His disoriented and delirious state could have been the result of an overdose of some kind, possibly a combination of alcohol and drugs used to subdue him. Another theory points to the possibility of Poe having been involved in a personal dispute that turned violent. Was there someone in his life who had a motive to harm him? Some have suggested that Poe's erratic behavior and emotional instability may have led to conflicts with those around him, possibly even romantic rivals or people who resented his growing fame. Could Poe's death have been the result of an argument that escalated into violence? There are also theories that suggest Poe might have been poisoned, either deliberately or accidentally. Some claim that the symptoms he exhibited, delirium, confusion, and a sudden, rapid decline in health, match those of poisoning by substances such as arsenic or mercury. However, toxicology tests at the time were not as advanced as they are today, and it is impossible to say with certainty whether this was the cause of death. There are even darker theories that suggest Poe's death could have been the result of a romantic entanglement gone wrong. Poe had a complicated and troubled love life, marked by numerous failed relationships and his persistent obsession with women he could never have. Was Poe's final relationship with Sarah Helen Whitman the catalyst for something far more tragic? Some have speculated that Poe's involvement with her may have led to a deadly confrontation, or that his relationship with her was marred by jealousy and emotional distress. Could this have led to a violent act that ultimately took his life? Despite the many theories, the true cause of Poe's death remains an unsolved enigma, one that continues to provoke intense debate among historians, biographers, and fans of his work. What makes this mystery even more captivating is that it seems to mirror the very themes that Poe explored in his own stories: murder, madness, and the thin line between life and death. As with many great mysteries, the death of Edgar Allan Poe has prompted more questions than answers. What was the real cause of his untimely demise? Was it a natural death, a result of alcohol or illness? Or was there something more sinister at play? An act of murder, a political conspiracy, or an unresolved personal conflict? Perhaps we will never know the full truth, but what we do know is that Poe's death is as elusive as his stories, and it remains a captivating puzzle for those who dare to venture into the shadows of his life. As we stand on the precipice of this mystery, we are left to wonder, what secrets did Edgar Allan Poe take with him to the grave? Was his death truly an accident of fate, or was it the final twist in a life defined by the unexpected? The answers may never be clear, but the questions will linger, as they always do in the world of the unknown. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, a vast explosion rocked the Siberian wilderness, an event so powerful it was felt as far away as London and recorded on seismographs in Europe. The epicenter of this mysterious event, however, lay deep in the heart of a remote part of Russia, near the Tunguska River, an area that was sparsely populated and largely unexplored at the time. In the aftermath, an expanse of trees was flattened, a strange scorch mark marred the earth, and the world was left with a profound mystery that continues to baffle scientists and researchers to this day. The event itself was described by those who witnessed it as nothing short of apocalyptic. On that fateful morning, a bright flash of light illuminated the sky, followed by a series of explosive blasts that reverberated across the landscape. The force was so great that it caused windows to shatter hundreds of miles away. At the same time, the sky was filled with a strange, reddish glow, and the air was thick with the scent of burned trees and scorched earth. When the dust began to settle, an eerie silence descended over the region, punctuated only by the sounds of nature reclaiming what was left of the land. The destruction on the ground was equally astonishing. A vast forest, stretching over 2,000 square kilometers, had been flattened as if an invisible hand had swept through, toppling thousands of trees. There were no immediate reports of casualties, though several years later, some reports suggested that a small number of people had been killed in the blast. Most importantly, however, no crater or physical remnants of the explosion were found, an anomaly that would haunt investigators for decades. It was as though whatever caused the explosion had vanished into the atmosphere, leaving no trace behind. In the years following the event, numerous expeditions were launched into the Tunguska region to uncover the cause of the explosion. Yet, despite the efforts of many experts, no one has ever been able to provide a definitive answer. What exactly happened on that summer morning, and what could explain the sheer scale of destruction? The mainstream explanation for the Tunguska event centers around the idea of a comet or asteroid, perhaps one as large as 50 meters across, that entered Earth's atmosphere and exploded in midair. This, scientists suggest, would explain the large-scale damage and the absence of a crater. When an object like a comet or asteroid enters the atmosphere at a high velocity, it can release an enormous amount of energy, enough to cause a massive explosion without leaving any physical remnants behind. However, the asteroid theory is not without its problems. While such an object could theoretically create the kind of explosion observed in Tunguska, no traces of an impact crater, meteorite fragments, or unusual chemical signatures have ever been found in the area. This absence of tangible evidence has led some to question whether a more conventional meteorite or asteroid impact was the true cause of the disaster. The mystery grows even deeper when we consider the other strange elements of the event. For example, the odd, reddish glow in the sky and the way the air seemed to smell of burned vegetation suggest that something other than an asteroid might have caused the explosion. Could it be that the Tunguska event was not the result of a physical object at all, but rather something more ethereal or atmospheric in nature? Some researchers have posited that the explosion could have been caused by a meteorological phenomenon, such as a rare airburst of highly charged particles or a ball lightning event. Ball lightning, an extremely rare and poorly understood atmospheric phenomenon, has been reported to create bright, glowing orbs that move through the air, sometimes causing explosions. However, there is no consensus on whether ball lightning can indeed create the kind of widespread destruction that was observed at Tunguska. Other, more speculative theories have taken the investigation into even more extraordinary territory. Some have suggested that the explosion was caused by a nuclear accident, perhaps the result of an experiment gone awry or some form of weaponry testing. This theory was fueled by the sheer magnitude of the explosion and the absence of any clear, natural cause. Some even proposed that the event could have been the result of a secret Soviet experiment, though no concrete evidence has ever supported this claim. There are also theories that delve into the realms of the supernatural. Could the Tunguska event have been caused by a cosmic force, an alien visitation, perhaps, or a cataclysmic event tied to the laws of the universe that we do not yet understand? These ideas often arise in the face of the many unknowns surrounding the event. How can we reconcile the scale of the destruction with the lack of any obvious physical trace? Could this have been a phenomenon that cannot be fully explained by current scientific knowledge? Perhaps the most intriguing theory, however, is the one that suggests a more profound, even philosophical explanation for what occurred that day. Some theorists suggest that the Tunguska event was the result of an anomaly in Earth's own energy field, or even the manifestation of some unexplained force within the Earth itself, a kind of natural event that transcends our understanding of the physical world. This theory touches upon the idea that Earth may be far more dynamic and interconnected than we have yet realized, and that events like Tunguska might be part of a natural process that we are still struggling to comprehend. One of the most famous and well-documented aspects of the Tunguska mystery is the behavior of the local wildlife in the aftermath of the explosion. According to reports from those who lived in the area, the land was left eerily silent for weeks following the event. Animal life seemed to have vanished, with many birds and small mammals disappearing without a trace. In some areas, the flora was left scorched and unrecognizable, as if the explosion had scorched the very essence of life itself. In addition, the nearby rivers experienced a strange shift in behavior, with fish and other aquatic life exhibiting unusual patterns of movement, as though some kind of invisible force had altered the water's flow. Some researchers have suggested that this may be evidence of a deeper, more profound disturbance to the Earth's magnetic fields, though such theories remain speculative. For many, the Tunguska event remains an enigma, an event that continues to defy explanation. Despite the extensive research, numerous expeditions, and countless hours of investigation, no one has ever been able to conclusively determine what caused the massive explosion that flattened the Siberian forest. Was it an asteroid, a comet, a secret weapon, or something more supernatural? As scientists continue to probe the mysteries of our universe, the Tunguska event stands as a reminder of how much we still have to learn about the forces that govern our world and the universe beyond. As we reflect on this great unknown, we are left with a sense of wonder and uncertainty. What if the true cause of the Tunguska event is a phenomenon beyond our current understanding, something that does not fit within the frameworks of conventional science? What if it was not an isolated incident but part of a larger cosmic pattern that we have yet to comprehend? The questions linger, unanswered, suggesting that there may be more hidden in the shadows of our universe than we could ever imagine. The Tunguska event may not have a clear answer, but it continues to captivate our imagination, sparking theories, investigations, and debates that bridge the gap between science and the unknown. The mystery remains as elusive as ever, leaving us to ponder what may still be waiting to be discovered, buried beneath the layers of history and the vastness of time. In the summer of 1518, the bustling streets of Strasbourg, located in the Holy Roman Empire, modern-day France, became the stage for one of history's most bewildering and unsettling events. The warm days of July, typically filled with the sound of merchants calling out and townsfolk chatting, were instead marked by an eerie and disturbing phenomenon. A group of people, all seemingly seized by an uncontrollable urge to dance. But this was not just any spontaneous outburst. These individuals danced without pause, for hours, for days, their bodies racked with fever, fatigue, and, in some cases, death. It was a strange, frenzied spectacle that would go down in history as the dancing plague. The story begins in the midst of a hot, oppressive summer. One morning, a woman named Frau Trophea, known to be a resident of the town, began dancing in the streets. At first, it seemed harmless, perhaps a momentary lapse in control or an expression of joy. But as the hours passed, she continued to dance, her movements becoming more frantic and uncontrolled. Within days, more people joined her. At first, it was just a handful of individuals, but soon the number swelled to dozens, then hundreds. By the end of the month, reports suggest that up to 400 people were caught in the feverish dance. Those who observed the spectacle described it as though the dancers were in a trance, struggling to stop, yet seemingly unable to control their limbs. Their faces contorted in agony, sweat pouring down their bodies, yet they could not cease moving. The crowd was not dancing out of joy, but out of some overwhelming compulsion, as though their bodies were no longer under their own command. What's even more chilling is that some of the dancers, unable to stop, literally danced themselves to death. Accounts from the time suggest that several individuals collapsed from exhaustion, heart failure, or strokes, yet still others continued to stumble on in their delirium. What could have caused such an extraordinary and inexplicable phenomenon? The town's leaders, desperate to understand what was happening and how to put an end to the plague, turned to the medical and religious authorities of the time. Their solution was to bring in professional dancers, hoping that by joining the afflicted in their strange compulsive act, they could somehow appease whatever spirit or demon had taken control. They even built a wooden stage in the middle of the town and hired musicians to provide music for the dancers to follow, believing that the act of dancing might somehow release them from the grip of whatever was causing this behavior. But these efforts only seemed to escalate the madness. The dancers did not stop. Some reports suggest that the plague continued for weeks, while others claim it lasted for months. The authorities, puzzled and frustrated by their inability to explain or stop the phenomenon, eventually began to view it as a divine punishment, perhaps a result of sin or the wrath of God. And yet, this theory didn't provide a clear explanation for what was happening. To this day, the dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's greatest medical and psychological mysteries. Theories abound, yet none provide a satisfactory answer. Was it a mass hysteria, triggered by the social and environmental pressures of the time? Or was there something more sinister at play? Was it the result of a strange epidemic or poisoning, perhaps due to ergot, a hallucinogenic fungus that grows on rye and can induce convulsions and hallucinations? Or was it an unexplained psychological event, a collective experience of the human mind that still defies logic and reason? Mass hysteria. One of the most widely accepted explanations is that the dancing plague of 1518 was an instance of mass hysteria. During times of great stress, such as famine, disease, and political instability, mass psychogenic illness, also known as mass hysteria, has been known to occur. The residents of Strasbourg were likely living under immense pressure. The town had recently suffered from a series of crop failures and food shortages, and the people were in the grip of a social and psychological tension that could have contributed to an outbreak of mass hysteria. This theory suggests that the dancers were not literally compelled by an outside force, but were instead victims of a psychological breakdown, each person influenced by the intense stress of their environment and the overwhelming fear that accompanied it. The collective nature of the event, the fact that so many people were involved, suggests that a psychological contagion took hold, with people witnessing others' symptoms and being influenced to join in. The mind can be a powerful force, and the idea that the body could physically respond to mental stress in such a dramatic and uncontrolled way is not entirely out of the question. Yet, this theory raises a significant question. How could so many people, including those who were not directly in the vicinity of the original dancers, have experienced this same compulsion? Mass hysteria typically affects smaller groups who share similar cultural and psychological triggers. But here, the phenomenon spread rapidly throughout the town, involving both men and women, young and old, and across various social classes. The sheer scale of the event makes it difficult to attribute it purely to psychological contagion. Ergot poisoning. Another popular theory that has emerged in recent years is that the dancers were victims of ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that can grow on rye, and it has long been known to have psychoactive effects on those who ingest it. The symptoms of ergot poisoning, such as hallucinations, convulsions, and even gangrene, seem to align closely with the descriptions of the dancing plague. Ingestion of contaminated rye could have led the afflicted individuals to experience intense hallucinations and spasms, which might have manifested in the form of compulsive dancing. But even this theory has its limitations. For one, not all of the symptoms associated with ergot poisoning match the descriptions of the event. While ergot can indeed cause severe physical symptoms, the uncontrollable dancing itself doesn't fully correspond to what we would expect from such poisoning. Moreover, not everyone in Strasbourg during the summer of 1518 was affected, which raises the question of why only certain individuals fell victim to the dancing and why it lasted for so long. Could it really be ergot poisoning, or is it possible that the true cause remains hidden, tied to some other force we have yet to understand? Religious and supernatural theories. Given the time period in which the event occurred, it's no surprise that some people turned to religious or supernatural explanations. The dancing plague was widely believed to be a manifestation of divine punishment, a sign of moral or spiritual failing. According to local lore, the afflicted were under the thrall of a demonic possession, and only through divine intervention could they be saved. Some theorists suggest that this idea of demonic influence could have been a powerful psychological motivator, leading people to dance in an attempt to rid themselves of the affliction. In this context, the actions of the dancers could be seen not as a physical manifestation, but as a symbolic, collective act of penance or submission to divine will. But if the event was truly caused by supernatural forces, why did it occur only in this one specific location? What was unique about Strasbourg at that time that might have drawn down the wrath of a higher power or a demonic presence? Could the human mind, in its desperation, have created a shared delusion so powerful that it took hold of hundreds of individuals at once? Environmental factors. There are also those who speculate that environmental factors may have played a role in the dancing plague. Some researchers have suggested that the region was experiencing a combination of extreme heat and atmospheric conditions that could have affected the people's mental states. Others have pointed to the presence of toxic gases or pollutants in the area, possibly released from underground sources or caused by nearby volcanic activity. While these theories are less widely accepted, they do add another layer of intrigue to the mystery. Despite the many theories, the true cause of the dancing plague of 1518 remains unresolved. Over 500 years later, we are still left wondering, what could have driven so many people to dance uncontrollably, and why did the phenomenon last for so long? Was it the result of mass hysteria, a toxic substance, or something more supernatural? In the end, the dancing plague of 1518 is a stark reminder of how little we truly understand about the complexities of the human mind and body. The event is a shadow in history, one that stretches across time, inviting questions that have yet to be answered. And perhaps, as we look at the strange forces that shape our lives, the most chilling aspect of this story is not the compulsion to dance, but the realization that some mysteries may never be fully explained, no matter how much we search for answers. As we peer into the past, we must ask ourselves, what other mysteries of the human experience remain hidden, just beyond our reach? The answers may be elusive, but the questions endure, as they always do. Ambrose Bierce, a name that resonates with literary fans for his sharp wit, dark humor, and piercing critiques of human nature, is perhaps best remembered for his chilling stories of the American Civil War and his scathing commentary on the absurdities of life. His work, filled with skepticism and a keen understanding of the macabre, left an indelible mark on American literature. But there is one part of Bierce's life that remains as mysterious as the dark stories he wrote: his sudden and unexplained disappearance in 1913. On the surface, Bierce's life seemed to be winding down with the same cynical clarity he had always shown. At the age of 71, the aging writer, journalist, and war correspondent had lived through the most tumultuous and painful parts of American history, from the bloody battlefields of the Civil War to the deep injustices of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. By the time of his disappearance, Bierce had spent several decades writing in a sharp, unforgiving tone about the world's hypocrisy, war, and death. His most famous short story, An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, still stands as a masterpiece of American fiction, blending psychological horror with the ultimate cruelty of fate. In December of 1913, Ambrose Bierce made a decision that seemed out of character: a decision that would leave an enduring mystery. He left San Francisco and set off for Mexico, ostensibly to cover the ongoing Mexican Revolution. The revolution was in full swing at the time, with clashes between rebel factions and government forces making headlines around the world. Bierce, ever the skeptic, had often expressed his disillusionment with American society, and it wasn't surprising that he would choose to witness, perhaps firsthand, the chaos and bloodshed of the Mexican conflict. But what happened to him in Mexico, what happened during the final leg of his journey, has never been fully explained. The last correspondence Bierce sent was a letter to his friend, the writer and editor, Blanche Partington, dated December 26, 1913. In it, Bierce described his intention to head to the front lines of the Mexican Revolution, and he stated that he was determined to see the conflict up close, almost as if he was preparing himself for one final brutal confrontation with death. After that letter, Bierce vanished. What is known about Bierce's final days comes primarily from reports and accounts that were pieced together after his disappearance. According to these reports, Bierce crossed into Mexico in early 1914, and it's believed that he made his way to the town of Chihuahua, which was at the heart of the revolutionary conflict. His arrival seemed somewhat unremarkable. He was just another aging American journalist eager to witness the unfolding drama of Mexico's revolutionary fighters. However, there is no evidence of Bierce ever making it past Chihuahua. Some accounts suggest that he was seen in a tavern in the city on January 1, 1914, talking to some fellow expatriates, but after that, his trail goes cold. In the years that followed, numerous investigations were launched to find the missing writer, but no concrete evidence was ever uncovered. Bierce simply disappeared from the historical record. For a man who had spent so much of his life observing human suffering, war, and violence, Bierce's final disappearance raised unsettling questions. Was this simply the natural end of an aging man seeking to end his life on his own terms, in a place rife with danger and uncertainty? Or was there something more sinister, perhaps, at play? The first and most widely accepted explanation for Bierce's disappearance is that he died in Mexico, perhaps killed by revolutionaries or bandits. After all, Mexico during this period was an incredibly dangerous place, particularly for foreigners who could be caught in the crossfire of the revolution. With Bierce's age and health declining, it's plausible that he was simply an unfortunate victim of the violence that was gripping the country. Yet, there is little concrete evidence to support this theory. There were no reports of Bierce's body being found in the aftermath of any of the numerous skirmishes that marked the Mexican Revolution. No eyewitnesses came forward to claim they had seen his death, and no Mexican officials, despite the chaotic nature of the time, seemed to have any knowledge of his fate. It is as if Bierce had simply vanished into thin air. The island of Roanoke, situated off the coast of present-day North Carolina, is as quiet and still as it seems, a contrast to the mysterious legacy it holds. In the late 16th century, it was the site of one of the most baffling and unexplained disappearances in American history, an event that continues to captivate historians, archaeologists, and mystery enthusiasts to this very day. The lost colony of Roanoke has remained one of the most enduring unsolved mysteries of early American history, its story clouded in uncertainty, speculation, and a growing sense of unease. To imagine Roanoke today is to think of dense forests, quiet shores, and the distant whisper of ocean winds. But centuries ago, when English settlers first arrived on the island in 1587, it was a vibrant, nascent colony, a new foothold in the New World, and a symbol of hope for England's expansion into the Americas. The settlers, led by Governor John White, intended to establish a permanent settlement in this fertile land. The colony, however, would soon disappear without a trace, leaving behind nothing but unsettling clues that would baffle explorers and historians for centuries. What happened to the people of Roanoke, their families, their homes, their lives? Why did they vanish? How is it that a colony established with such purpose, backed by the full force of the English crown, could simply disappear? The answers are elusive, and every theory that tries to shed light on their fate only seems to create more questions. The story of Roanoke begins in 1585, when a group of English settlers, led by Sir Walter Raleigh, established a colony on the northern part of what is now North Carolina's coast. The settlement was not particularly successful, plagued by hostile relations with local Native American tribes, limited resources, and internal strife. After a difficult year, the settlers returned to England in 1586. But the idea of a permanent English presence in the Americas did not fade, and in 1587, a second group of colonists, including women and children, were sent to Roanoke Island, this time led by Governor John White. White, an experienced explorer, had visions of a thriving colony. He returned to England that same year, intending to gather supplies and bring them back to Roanoke. But upon his return to England, a series of unforeseen events delayed his departure. It was not until 1590, 3 years later, that White was finally able to return to Roanoke Island. What he found upon his arrival would leave him, and the world, forever questioning the fate of the colony. When Governor White arrived in August 1590, the island was eerily deserted. There was no sign of the colonists, no smoke from fires, no signs of life. The settlement's homes were in disarray, and the area appeared abandoned. There were no bodies, no signs of struggle. Yet, in the remains of the settlement, White discovered a mysterious clue: the word Croatoan carved into a post, and the letters CRO etched into a nearby tree. This word, Croatoan, was a reference to a nearby island where a friendly Native American tribe, also named the Croatoans, lived. It was the only tangible clue left behind, and it suggested that the settlers may have moved to the nearby island in an attempt to survive. However, White was unable to investigate further. A violent storm forced him to abandon his search, and when he returned to England, he could never mount another expedition to Roanoke. The lost colony, as it would come to be known, became a haunting riddle that would elude resolution for centuries. The word Croatoan is an eerie and mysterious marker. Was it a simple message to indicate where the settlers had gone, or was it a clue to something far darker? Did the colonists flee to the nearby island, or had they met an untimely end, victims of hostile Native American tribes, starvation, or disease? Or was there something even more inexplicable at play, something supernatural, or perhaps beyond the understanding of the 16th century settlers? Theories about the fate of the lost colony are as varied as they are numerous. Some explanations are more grounded in historical research, while others wander into the realm of the speculative and the strange. One of the more widely accepted theories is that the settlers of Roanoke Island did, in fact, move to the nearby Croatoan Island, as indicated by the cryptic message. The Croatoan tribe was known to have had peaceful relations with the English settlers, and it is possible that the colonists, faced with dwindling supplies, turned to the Croatoans for help. Perhaps they moved to the island in search of food or refuge from the challenges they faced on Roanoke Island. The island of Roanoke, situated off the coast of present-day North Carolina, is as quiet and still as it seems, a contrast to the mysterious legacy it holds. In the late 16th century, it was the site of one of the most baffling and unexplained disappearances in American history, an event that continues to captivate historians, archaeologists, and mystery enthusiasts to this very day. The lost colony of Roanoke has remained one of the most enduring unsolved mysteries of early American history, its story clouded in uncertainty, speculation, and a growing sense of unease. To imagine Roanoke today is to think of dense forests, quiet shores, and the distant whisper of ocean winds. But centuries ago, when English settlers first arrived on the island in 1587, it was a vibrant, nascent colony, a new foothold in the New World, and a symbol of hope for England's expansion into the Americas. The settlers, led by Governor John White, intended to establish a permanent settlement in this fertile land. The colony, however, would soon disappear without a trace, leaving behind nothing but unsettling clues that would baffle explorers and historians for centuries. What happened to the people of Roanoke, their families, their homes, their lives? Why did they vanish? How is it that a colony established with such purpose, backed by the full force of the English crown, could simply disappear? The answers are elusive, and every theory that tries to shed light on their fate only seems to create more questions. The story of Roanoke begins in 1585, when a group of English settlers, led by Sir Walter Raleigh, established a colony on the northern part of what is now North Carolina's coast. The settlement was not particularly successful, plagued by hostile relations with local Native American tribes, limited resources, and internal strife. After a difficult year, the settlers returned to England in 1586. But the idea of a permanent English presence in the Americas did not fade, and in 1587, a second group of colonists, including women and children, were sent to Roanoke Island, this time led by Governor John White. White, an experienced explorer, had visions of a thriving colony. He returned to England that same year, intending to gather supplies and bring them back to Roanoke. But upon his return to England, a series of unforeseen events delayed his departure. It was not until 1590, 3 years later, that White was finally able to return to Roanoke Island. What he found upon his arrival would leave him, and the world, forever questioning the fate of the colony. When Governor White arrived in August 1590, the island was eerily deserted. There was no sign of the colonists, no smoke from fires, no signs of life. The settlement's homes were in disarray, and the area appeared abandoned. There were no bodies, no signs of struggle. Yet, in the remains of the settlement, White discovered a mysterious clue. The word Croatoan carved into a post, and the letters CRO etched into a nearby tree. This word, Croatoan, was a reference to a nearby island, where a friendly Native American tribe, also named the Croatoans, lived. It was the only tangible clue left behind, and it suggested that the settlers may have moved to the nearby island in an attempt to survive. However, White was unable to investigate further. A violent storm forced him to abandon his search, and when he returned to England, he could never mount another expedition to Roanoke. The lost colony, as it would come to be known, became a haunting riddle that would elude resolution for centuries. The word Croatoan is an eerie and mysterious marker. Was it a simple message to indicate where the settlers had gone, or was it a clue to something far darker? Did the colonists flee to the nearby island, or had they met an untimely end, victims of hostile Native American tribes, starvation, or disease? Or was there something even more inexplicable at play, something supernatural, or perhaps beyond the understanding of the 16th century settlers? Theories about the fate of the lost colony are as varied as they are numerous. Some explanations are more grounded in historical research, while others wander into the realm of the speculative and the strange. One of the more widely accepted theories is that the settlers of Roanoke Island did, in fact, move to the nearby Croatoan Island, as indicated by the cryptic message. The Croatoan tribe was known to have had peaceful relations with the English settlers, and it is possible that the colonists, faced with dwindling supplies, turned to the Croatoans for help. Perhaps they moved to the island in search of food or refuge from the challenges they faced on Roanoke Island. In 1602, an English explorer named Bartholomew Gosnold visited the Croatoan Island and reported seeing signs of English habitation, suggesting that some of the settlers may have indeed survived there. However, no definitive evidence has ever been found to confirm this theory. It is possible that the Croatoan tribe took the settlers in, but over time, the colonists may have been absorbed into the tribe, their distinct identities lost to history. But if that were the case, why was there no further record of them? No accounts from the Croatoans or the settlers themselves? Another theory suggests that the settlers of Roanoke were attacked and killed by local Native American tribes. Tensions between the settlers and the indigenous people had been strained even before White left for England, and there were reports of skirmishes and misunderstandings. Some historians have speculated that, after White's departure, the settlers were either killed outright or captured and tortured by a hostile tribe. However, this theory is complicated by the fact that no bodies were found at the settlement, and no definitive evidence of a massacre has ever been uncovered. If the colonists had been killed in such a violent manner, why were there no signs of a struggle or death? No charred remains, no weapons, nothing to indicate a violent confrontation? The silence of the settlement after White's return points to something far stranger than a simple attack. Another possibility is that the settlers succumbed to starvation or disease. The colony had faced food shortages, and the harsh conditions of the New World likely took their toll. Malnutrition and disease were common killers in early colonies, and the settlers may have died from these factors before they were able to send a clear message or leave a record of their fate. Some have speculated that the survivors, unable to cope with the difficulties of the island, may have moved inland or joined neighboring tribes in a desperate attempt to survive. Again, this theory falls short of explaining the absence of bodies or any physical evidence of the settlers' deaths. Why would the remains of the settlers not be found, even after so many years of investigation? Was there simply no trace of them left to uncover, or had something more mysterious and inexplicable erased all signs of their existence? As with many of history's unsolved mysteries, there are those who have proposed more supernatural or otherworldly explanations. Some suggest that the settlers of Roanoke were victims of some sort of paranormal force, perhaps a curse, a vengeful spirit, or an unexplained cosmic event. These theories often delve into the realm of legend, where folklore and unexplained occurrences merge into the unknown. Could the settlers have disappeared due to a rift in time or space, or was there some supernatural entity that took them from the island? Such theories remain speculative, lacking any concrete evidence to support them, but they persist because the mystery of Roanoke, in many ways, defies logical explanation. The lost colony of Roanoke is a story that continues to haunt the American imagination. Every year, archaeologists, historians, and explorers continue to search for answers, hoping that one day the mystery will be unraveled, that a definitive explanation will be found. Yet, despite centuries of investigation, no one has been able to explain what happened to the settlers of Roanoke with certainty. Perhaps the greatest enigma of the lost colony is not the fact of its disappearance, but the absence of any definitive answers. The cryptic message Croatoan carved into a post on Roanoke Island remains as haunting as ever, an open door to questions that seem to lead nowhere. And perhaps that is the real mystery, the lingering sense that something more is hidden in the shadow of history, something that has yet to be revealed. Was it the result of poor planning, internal strife, or the harsh realities of life in the New World? Or did the settlers of Roanoke vanish for reasons that we may never fully understand? The questions remain unanswered, and the island of Roanoke, with its dense trees and empty shores, will always be a place where history's most unsettling questions are left to echo through time. As we search for answers, we must ask ourselves, could it be that the mystery of the lost colony is not something meant to be solved? Could it be that Roanoke's secret is hidden in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered by those willing to look just a little closer at the strange, uncertain past? In the vast, uncharted expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, a ship drifted silently through the waves, its sails unfurled, its decks eerily still. The ship was not deserted by the elements, nor had it been caught in a violent storm. It had simply been left behind. The Mary Celeste, an American merchant vessel, was found adrift off the Azores Islands on December 4th, 1872, with no sign of its crew. The ship was in perfect condition, the cargo intact, and yet not a soul remained aboard. The mystery surrounding the Mary Celeste has baffled sailors, historians, and investigators for over a century. What could have led a crew to abandon their ship in such a strange and unsettling manner? And why, after all this time, does this mystery still haunt us? The Mary Celeste was a brigantine, a two-masted vessel built for merchant voyages. It had sailed from New York on November 7, 1872, under the command of Captain Benjamin Briggs. The ship was carrying a cargo of denatured alcohol, which at the time was a valuable but volatile commodity. The crew of 7 men, along with Captain Briggs' wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, were to navigate the ship to Genoa, Italy. For over a month, the Mary Celeste sailed through the Atlantic without incident, until it was found drifting, abandoned, and completely undisturbed. On that fateful day in December, the Mary Celeste was spotted by the British brig Dei Gratia, commanded by Captain David Morehouse. At first, Morehouse thought the ship was in distress, but as he approached, he noticed that there were no signs of any crew members on deck. He ordered a boarding party to investigate, and what they found aboard the Mary Celeste was nothing short of bizarre. The ship was not damaged, nor had it been involved in a violent storm. The sails were set, the rudder was in place, and the ship's logbook was on board, indicating that the ship had sailed normally up until the moment it was abandoned. There was no sign of a struggle, no indication of any violence or conflict. The captain's personal belongings, including his valuables, were still in his cabin. The ship's cargo of alcohol remained largely untouched. Even the ship's provisions, food, water, and supplies were abundant, suggesting that the crew had left in a hurry but had not been in immediate danger of starvation or deprivation. The only thing missing were the people. The crew, along with the captain's family, had simply vanished. The mystery of the Mary Celeste became one of the most enduring maritime puzzles in history. Investigators and historians have spent decades trying to unravel the enigma of what happened aboard that ship. Several theories have emerged, but none have been able to fully explain the circumstances of the abandonment. The absence of any clear signs of struggle, combined with the ship's relatively undisturbed condition, leaves us wondering, what could have caused the crew to abandon the vessel so suddenly? One of the earliest and most widely discussed theories revolves around the cargo the Mary Celeste was carrying: denatured alcohol. At the time, denatured alcohol was a highly volatile substance, and there were concerns about the danger it posed to ships. Some have speculated that a leak in the cargo hold may have caused fumes to fill the lower decks, creating a dangerous and potentially explosive situation. If the crew had smelled the fumes or discovered signs of a leak, they may have panicked and abandoned the ship in haste, fearing that the ship was about to explode. However, the cargo hold was found to be intact, and there were no signs of any significant damage that would suggest a fire or explosion had occurred. The alcohol was still present, and the barrels were mostly intact. This theory, while plausible, does not fully explain why the crew would leave without taking their personal belongings or even the ship's navigational instruments. If the threat had been so dire, why would they have left the ship so well maintained? Another common theory is that the ship was boarded by pirates. Pirates were known to operate in the waters off the coast of the Americas during this period, and some have suggested that the Mary Celeste was attacked and its crew taken hostage or killed. However, this theory also fails to account for the fact that the ship was found in perfect condition, with its cargo untouched and its valuables intact. If the ship had been boarded by pirates, one would expect to find signs of a struggle or missing valuables. Yet, nothing had been stolen. It's difficult to imagine a pirate crew boarding a ship only to leave it behind without taking anything of value. Additionally, there were no signs of forced entry or damage to the ship that would suggest a pirate attack. The calmness of the scene aboard the Mary Celeste is not consistent with the violence one would expect in a pirate raid. Some have suggested that a mutiny occurred aboard the Mary Celeste, with the crew taking control of the ship and forcing the captain and his family to abandon it. This theory hinges on the idea that the crew was dissatisfied with their captain or their situation. However, there is no evidence of mutiny, and it seems unlikely that the entire crew would have conspired to abandon the ship in such a calculated and mysterious manner. If mutiny were the cause, why would the crew leave the ship so untouched, leaving behind their belongings and the captain's family? Moreover, there was no sign of any violence between the crew and the captain, and the ship's logbook did not show any indication of trouble brewing. The Mary Celeste was not a ship marred by discontent or rebellion, making this theory seem somewhat far-fetched. One of the more speculative theories suggests that some natural disaster or unforeseen danger occurred while the ship was at sea. Could an underwater earthquake, a waterspout, or some other maritime phenomenon have caused the crew to panic and abandon ship? It's certainly possible that the Mary Celeste encountered something unexplainable, a violent storm, a sudden change in weather, or a strange natural event that prompted the crew to flee. This theory, however, also runs into significant issues. No evidence of a storm or other natural disaster was found, and the ship was in remarkably good condition upon discovery. If the crew had been forced to abandon ship due to such an event, there should have been more signs of damage or distress. The ship was too well preserved, and the lack of any damage to the ship or its cargo raises questions about the validity of this theory. Given the eerie and unexplained nature of the Mary Celeste mystery, it's no surprise that some have turned to more supernatural explanations. The idea that the ship may have been cursed, haunted, or the victim of some otherworldly force has found a place in the lore surrounding its disappearance. Could the ship have been the site of some malevolent force, or did the crew encounter something beyond human comprehension, something that caused them to abandon their vessel in fear? The idea of a cursed ship has been a part of maritime legend for centuries, and the Mary Celeste fits neatly into that narrative. Ships have long been associated with supernatural occurrences, from ghostly apparitions to unexplained disappearances. But, like the other theories, this one remains speculative and lacks any concrete evidence. The supernatural explanation may hold a certain romantic allure, but it is no more verifiable than any of the others. Despite the many theories, the true fate of the Mary Celeste remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in maritime history. The ship's abandonment is so baffling, so unexplained, that it continues to stir the imaginations of those who study it. No theory, whether grounded in practical explanations or speculative fiction, has been able to fully explain what happened to the ship's crew. Did they flee in panic, driven by some unseen terror or danger? Did they meet their fate in some way that has left no trace behind? Or is the answer even stranger, beyond our understanding? The mystery of the Mary Celeste persists because it defies the natural laws we rely on to make sense of the world. It is a riddle with no clear solution, a puzzle that leaves behind only the most perplexing questions. As we look at the ship's perfectly preserved remains, still floating across the ocean waves in our minds, we are reminded that some mysteries may never be solved. The Mary Celeste may always remain a ghost ship, its final chapter forever unwritten. What happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste? Were they the victims of something supernatural, or did they simply flee in a moment of overwhelming fear? Perhaps the answer is not out there on the sea, waiting to be found, but within the haunting silence of the Mary Celeste itself, a reminder that sometimes, even in our modern age, some things remain beyond our grasp. The Flannan Isles, a small cluster of rocky islands off the west coast of Scotland, are a place where the sea, the sky, and the cliffs meet in an often unforgiving embrace. The waves crash relentlessly against jagged rocks, while the wind howls through the narrow gaps between the islands. It is a hauntingly beautiful, isolated place, where nature's power seems to hold sway over all. In this desolate, windswept corner of the world stands the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, a beacon of hope for sailors navigating the dangerous waters of the North Atlantic. But the lighthouse, which had been operating for years as a symbol of safety and guidance, is also the site of one of the most baffling and eerie disappearances in maritime history. On December 15, 1900, the lighthouse keepers, 3 men tasked with tending to the light, vanished without a trace. No one knows for sure what happened to them. The only clues were left behind in the form of strange and unsettling circumstances. The lighthouse itself is perched on the largest of the Flannan Isles, Allan Moor, rising over 75 feet above the sea. From a distance it seems to stand like a sentinel, guarding the approach to the Outer Hebrides. The keepers, responsible for ensuring the light remained operational, lived isolated lives, surrounded by nothing but the raw elements. The lighthouse had been constructed in 1899, a symbol of progress in an otherwise inhospitable environment, designed to save lives and prevent shipwrecks in these dangerous waters. But in the winter of 1900, it became the scene of an inexplicable tragedy that continues to haunt the island to this day. On December 15, 1900, a ship named Archtor, en route from Leith to the Isles of Skye, passed the Flannan Isles. The ship's captain, concerned about the light not being visible, made a note to report the matter to the authorities. The lighthouse should have been illuminated at all hours, but the light was out. This, of course, was an anomaly, but not one that would immediately raise alarm. The lighthouse, after all, was managed by 3 keepers: James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. The light might have failed due to a mechanical issue, or the men might have been unable to light it due to a storm. But what happened next was far more unsettling than anyone could have predicted. The lighthouse was typically visited by a relief vessel on a regular schedule. On December 26th, a ship named Hesperus arrived to deliver supplies and rotate the crew. However, when the Hesperus reached the island, it found the lighthouse empty. There was no sign of the keepers. At first, the relief crew thought perhaps the men had simply gone to check on their animals or were elsewhere on the island, but there was no sign of them anywhere. The lighthouse was found locked, and the key was missing. Inside, everything appeared in order at first glance, until the crew began to look more closely. The kitchen table was set for a meal that appeared to have been left unfinished. A clock, stopped at 8 o'clock, was found in the living quarters. The beds were unmade, and 2 of the keepers' coats were missing. Yet their personal belongings, such as books and letters, were still neatly arranged. There was no sign of a struggle or violence, and nothing seemed to have been disturbed except for the most unusual detail. One of the keepers' chairs was overturned, as though someone had left in a hurry. The most telling sign, however, was the state of the lighthouse's logbook. The last entry was dated December 12th, 5 days before the relief ship arrived, and it contained a cryptic and unsettling entry. Storm ended. The men are calm. There was no mention of the events leading up to the disappearance or any explanation for the situation. It seemed as though the keepers had simply vanished without a word. The disappearance of the Flannan Isles keepers is one of the most puzzling maritime mysteries in history, and over the years, various theories have emerged to explain what may have happened to the men. Yet, despite the passage of time, no definitive answers have been found. The theories range from plausible explanations based on human error to more speculative ideas that suggest the involvement of supernatural forces. One of the most widely discussed explanations is that a fierce storm struck the island and caused the men to panic. The Flannan Isles, as anyone who has spent time there knows, are not a place for the faint-hearted. The weather can be brutally unpredictable, and powerful storms are common. It is entirely possible that a particularly violent storm forced the men to leave the lighthouse, perhaps in an attempt to secure equipment, retrieve provisions, or shelter in a safer location. But if this theory holds any weight, there are inconsistencies. The lighthouse was built to withstand the harshest of conditions. It was, after all, a life-saving beacon that had been standing for months without incident. The keepers were experienced men who knew the risks of their job. Why would they leave the lighthouse behind, especially with no signs of damage? The logbook, which mentioned the storm's end, also suggests that any danger had already passed. Why, then, would the men have left at the height of what was presumably a calm period? Another theory posits that tensions between the three keepers could have led to some sort of conflict. According to this theory, the men were isolated from the rest of the world and might have grown increasingly frustrated with their circumstances. One of the keepers, Donald MacArthur, was known to have had a temper, and some suggest that a heated argument could have escalated into something more violent. This theory suggests that MacArthur might have attacked his fellow keepers, or perhaps a quarrel between the men led to an impulsive decision to leave the island entirely. However, this theory doesn't align well with the evidence. No signs of struggle or violence were found on the island, and the men had no known history of violent behavior. Furthermore, the logbook shows no signs of distress or conflict between the keepers. It seems unlikely that such a dramatic event would have gone unrecorded in their final days. Another possibility is that the men encountered a freak accident that led them to abandon the lighthouse. Some have speculated that one or more of the keepers fell victim to an accidental fall from the cliffs, perhaps while securing equipment or performing maintenance on the lighthouse. In this scenario, the remaining keepers might have made a decision to leave in a state of confusion or panic, only to disappear without leaving any clear explanation. Though this theory offers a potential explanation for their disappearance, it doesn't fully account for the missing coats or the overturned chair. If one or more of the men had fallen or been injured, why wouldn't they have left some kind of message or a clearer record of what happened? Perhaps the most intriguing and eerie theory surrounding the disappearance is that of supernatural involvement. Given the location's isolation and the often terrifying conditions of the Flannan Isles, it is easy to see how the mystery could be woven into folklore. There are whispers that the lighthouse might be haunted, or that the island has a dark, malevolent energy that could have claimed the men. Some even suggest that the keepers were victims of a strange, otherworldly force, a force that caused them to leave the lighthouse in the dead of night, never to return. The idea that the Flannan Isles might hold some sort of supernatural secret certainly fits within the broader context of maritime legends. Lighthouses, after all, are often the setting for ghost stories and strange tales. But the evidence for such an explanation is purely speculative. Could it be that the men encountered something beyond human understanding? Or is this simply a way of explaining away the unexplainable? To this day, no definitive explanation has been found for the disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers. The theories remain speculative, and the evidence left behind is both tantalizing and frustrating. The strange entry in the logbook, the missing men, and the eerie calmness of the scene aboard the lighthouse all raise unsettling questions that have never been answered. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, their answers lost to time and the relentless power of nature. Perhaps one day, new evidence will come to light, or the disappearance will be explained through the discovery of a long-lost document or piece of information. Until then, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse remains a monument to the unknown, a reminder that not every mystery can be solved, and some vanishings remain forever suspended in the fog of time. As the wind continues to howl over the cliffs of Eilean Moor, the question lingers. What really happened to the keepers of the Flannan Isles, and why has the mystery of their disappearance endured for so long? Nestled in the Valley of the Kings, where the sun casts long shadows over the sand and the limestone cliffs rise stark and silent, the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun lay hidden for thousands of years. The tomb, located in the Egyptian desert near Luxor, was uncovered in 1922 by the British archaeologist Howard Carter. The discovery would go on to become one of the most famous and most controversial in the history of archaeology. But it was not the treasures, the gold, or the artifacts that caused the most intrigue. It was the mystery surrounding the young king himself and the unsettling whispers of a curse that surrounded his tomb. Tutankhamun, often referred to as King Tut, ascended the throne at a young age, perhaps around the age of 9 or 10, during a period of upheaval in ancient Egypt. His reign, lasting only a short decade, is largely remembered not for his accomplishments or political prowess, but for his untimely death and the mysterious circumstances surrounding it. What was the cause of his death, and was there a darker force at play, one that transcended the realms of mere mortals? While some regard his death as the result of natural causes, perhaps an accident or illness, there are those who believe that Tutankhamun's death may have been the result of foul play. Was his death truly an accident, or was he murdered? And, more chillingly, is there any truth to the enduring legend of the curse that surrounded his tomb? In November 1922, after years of excavation, Howard Carter and his team of archaeologists finally gained access to the tomb of King Tutankhamun. What they found inside was nothing short of breathtaking. The tomb, nearly intact, was filled with treasures, gold, and priceless artifacts. There were chariots, statues, weapons, and a magnificent sarcophagus that housed the young king's mummified body. Carter's discovery would spark a global frenzy and forever alter our understanding of ancient Egypt. But as Carter and his team celebrated the discovery, an unsettling pattern began to emerge. Within a few months of the tomb's opening, several individuals involved in the excavation or connected to the discovery would meet untimely and often mysterious deaths. Lord Carnarvon, the British aristocrat who funded the expedition, was the first to fall ill shortly after the tomb was opened. On April 5, 1923, Carnarvon died from an infected mosquito bite, leading to a flurry of speculation about the so-called curse of the Pharaoh. Within a few years, the deaths continued. Some believed that those who disturbed the tomb had angered the ancient gods, invoking a curse that would strike down those who had desecrated the resting place of the young king. The legend of the curse would be further perpetuated by the media, casting an eerie pall over the tomb and everyone connected to the discovery. However, the real mystery lay not in the deaths of those involved in the excavation, but in the life and death of King Tutankhamun himself. Who was this young king, and why did he die so suddenly at such a young age? Was there more to his death than the simple, accepted explanations? King Tut was only about 18 or 19 years old when he died. For a ruler of ancient Egypt, such an early death seemed unusual, particularly since the pharaohs were often regarded as divine figures, bestowed with favor and protection from the gods. Yet, King Tut's passing was abrupt, and no clear cause was identified at the time. Scholars, historians, and doctors have since speculated about the reasons for his untimely demise. One of the earliest and most widely accepted theories was that King Tut died from an infection brought on by a broken leg. X-rays of his mummified body, conducted in the 1960s, showed signs of a fracture in his left leg. The theory suggested that this fracture might have become infected, leading to sepsis, a life-threatening condition. If this theory is accurate, it would mean that Tutankhamun's death was likely a tragic accident, and his passing might not have been the result of a nefarious plot. However, this theory has not been without its critics. Some point to inconsistencies in the evidence. The fractured leg was not an unusual injury. Many ancient Egyptians suffered broken bones due to accidents or falls, yet not all of them died from them. The infection theory also does not fully account for the timing of Tutankhamun's death, as there were no clear signs that his illness had progressed in a way that would have led to such an immediate and fatal outcome. More recent investigations have revealed that King Tut's body showed signs of other ailments. DNA testing has indicated that he suffered from a number of genetic disorders, possibly caused by inbreeding within the royal family. Some scholars suggest that these disorders may have contributed to his early death, leading to a weakened immune system and a susceptibility to infection. Yet, these findings still leave open the possibility that his death was not purely accidental. As intriguing as the natural explanations may be, there are those who believe that King Tut's death was far from an accident. In fact, some suggest that Tutankhamun may have been murdered. Could his death have been the result of a political conspiracy or even an assassination? This theory stems partly from the fact that Tutankhamun's reign occurred during a period of instability in ancient Egypt. His father, Akhenaten, had ruled for many years, during which he introduced the worship of a single god, Aten, which caused great political and religious upheaval. After Akhenaten's death, Tutankhamun assumed the throne, but he was a mere child, and it is believed that powerful figures in the court, including the vizier Ai, may have controlled much of the kingdom's affairs. There is also evidence that suggests Tut may have been influenced by his advisors, and some speculate that his sudden death might have been the result of political intrigue. Some even point to the possibility that Tutankhamun was murdered to solidify the power of another member of the court. It's suggested that Ai, who succeeded Tutankhamun as pharaoh, may have had a motive to remove the young king, allowing him to assume the throne. Furthermore, there are signs of a blow to Tut's head, an injury that might have been inflicted in a violent attack. However, the evidence for such a theory is circumstantial at best. No conclusive proof of foul play has ever been found, and many scholars believe that the head wound was likely the result of embalming or a post-mortem injury, rather than a deliberate act of murder. Still, the theory persists, fueled by the age-old mystery surrounding the untimely death of one of ancient Egypt's most famous pharaohs. Amidst the theories about his death, one other element continues to cloud the story of King Tut: his tomb's so-called curse. Over the years, many of those connected to the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb met untimely or unexplained deaths, leading some to wonder whether the ancient Egyptians had placed a supernatural curse on the tomb, ensuring that those who dared to disturb it would pay a heavy price. It's important to note that there is little historical evidence to suggest that the ancient Egyptians themselves believed in a curse surrounding their tombs. Tombs were sacred places, but there is no record that curses were placed on them in the way that later legend suggests. Instead, the idea of a curse may have been a convenient narrative constructed by the media to explain the deaths of those involved in the tomb's discovery. Despite this, the curse theory remains a powerful and persistent part of the Tutankhamun mythos. The unexplained deaths, the mysterious nature of Tut's life and death, and the eerie atmosphere surrounding the tomb all contribute to a sense that something beyond mere human comprehension might have been at play. To this day, the true cause of King Tut's death remains a mystery. Was it a tragic accident caused by a broken leg and infection? Was it the result of a genetic disorder that led to an early death? Or could it have been a political conspiracy, an assassination designed to secure power for others within the royal court? And, perhaps most chillingly, is there some truth to the legend of the curse that surrounded the tomb? A supernatural force that sought to punish those who dared to disturb the pharaoh's eternal rest. The questions surrounding King Tut's death remain unsolved, and the mystery only deepens as new evidence emerges. As we continue to investigate the life, death, and tomb of this ancient king, we are reminded that some mysteries, no matter how much we uncover, may never truly be explained. What secrets remain buried in the sands of Egypt, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? Only time will tell. In the quiet depths of the Aegean Sea, off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, lies one of the most mysterious discoveries in the history of archaeology: a small, corroded set of bronze gears, carefully interlocked in ways that defied understanding for centuries. These fragments, later known as the Antikythera mechanism, were retrieved in 1901 from a shipwreck that had been sitting at the bottom of the sea for over 2 millennia. The device was unlike anything the modern world had ever seen, and its discovery raised more questions than it answered. What could this remarkable device have been? An ancient calculator, a celestial clock, or something far more advanced than anything previously thought possible in the ancient world? Scholars and scientists, over the course of more than a century of study, have tried to piece together its secrets, revealing a machine capable of predicting astronomical positions with incredible precision, a level of technological sophistication that should not have existed during its time, around the 1st century BC. Yet, just as the mechanism itself seemed to defy the understanding of its creators, so too does the question of who created it. The true identity of the genius behind the Antikythera mechanism, the person who conceived this extraordinary invention, remains a mystery. We know little about the individual or individuals who crafted such a marvel, and their disappearance only deepens the enigma. How could such advanced knowledge have vanished so completely from history, leaving only a set of gears and fragments to hint at its existence? Could the creator of the Antikythera mechanism have been a figure so powerful, so far ahead of their time, that their legacy was deliberately erased? Or was the mechanism lost in the slow tides of time? In 1900, a group of sponge divers off the coast of Antikythera made an unexpected find: pieces of what appeared to be an ancient wreck. As they descended into the depths, they uncovered a shipwreck dating to the 1st century BC, laden with artifacts, statues, pottery, and what appeared to be the remains of an advanced technological instrument. Among the debris, the divers discovered several bronze gears and fragments of a highly complex mechanism. Over time, archaeologists would come to realize that these pieces were part of a device that resembled an ancient analog computer, a mechanism capable of tracking celestial bodies, predicting eclipses, and mapping the movements of planets. This device, now known as the Antikythera mechanism, has fascinated scientists and historians ever since its discovery. The intricate arrangement of bronze gears, some of which are no larger than a thumbprint, showed an understanding of astronomy and mechanical engineering that was far ahead of its time. It was a clockwork model of the solar system, precise to a degree that suggests the knowledge of astronomical cycles had reached a level that was not thought to have existed in ancient Greece. But as incredible as the discovery was, it raised an unsettling question. Who built the Antikythera mechanism? This is where the story begins to take a mysterious turn. The wreck was dated to around 70 to 60 BC, a time when the ancient Greek world was still flourishing with scientific and philosophical advancements. Yet, the technological sophistication of the mechanism suggests that its creator was not just a brilliant artisan, but a visionary, a person capable of devising a machine that was centuries ahead of its time. And yet, no record exists of such a person. How could something so advanced have been created, only for its creator to fade into the shadows of history? Historians have speculated about who might have created the Antikythera mechanism. Was it a scholar from the famed Library of Alexandria, a center of knowledge and learning in the ancient world? Perhaps it was the work of a Greek philosopher or inventor, like Archimedes, whose mechanical genius was legendary. Some have suggested that it could have been a device made by an unknown mathematician or engineer working in the royal court of the Ptolemies or the Seleucids, who ruled parts of the Greek world at the time. There are several theories about the identity of the creator, but none are definitive. One of the most plausible ideas is that the mechanism was the work of Hipparchus, the ancient Greek astronomer who lived around 190 to 120 BC. Hipparchus was one of the most important figures in the history of astronomy, and his understanding of the movements of celestial bodies was unparalleled for his time. He is often credited with discovering the precession of the equinoxes and compiling the first accurate star catalogue. His work was fundamental in shaping the study of astronomy for centuries, and it is possible that the Antikythera mechanism was created as a tool to assist him in his observations of the stars and planets. Another possible candidate is Archimedes, the brilliant mathematician and inventor of ancient Greece, who lived around 287 to 212 BC. Archimedes is best known for his work in geometry, mechanics, and the invention of numerous devices, including the famous Archimedean screw. Some scholars have speculated that the technology behind the Antikythera mechanism might have been influenced by Archimedes' inventions, though there is no direct evidence to suggest that he had any connection to the device. Yet, the lack of direct evidence linking any of these historical figures to the Antikythera mechanism is unsettling. The possibility remains that the device was created by an anonymous genius, someone whose name was lost to time, their contributions erased by the forces of history. Perhaps the creator was a private individual or a small circle of intellectuals working outside the spotlight of recorded history, a group whose knowledge was never fully acknowledged or documented. Could it be that the person who created the Antikythera mechanism was part of a secret society or a forgotten school of thought whose work was deliberately suppressed by those in power? As time passed, the Antikythera mechanism's origins seemed to slip deeper into the abyss of history. The knowledge necessary to construct such a device was lost for centuries, and it would not be until the 20th century that modern scientists would begin to unlock the secrets of the machine. Using advanced imaging technologies like X-ray and CT scanning, researchers were able to reconstruct the mechanism's gearwork, revealing its complexity and sophistication. It was a remarkable achievement, a testament to the ingenuity of ancient minds. Yet, despite this knowledge, the true creator of the device remains unknown. This absence of information about the creator raises a broader question. Why was such an advanced piece of technology lost in the first place? How could the knowledge and skill required to make the Antikythera mechanism have disappeared so completely from history? Some scholars argue that the mechanism was likely a one-of-a-kind device, created for a specific purpose and not intended for widespread use. It could have been a tool designed to help with the navigation of ships or a specialized tool for astronomers or astrologers. If this was the case, the device may not have had any direct influence on subsequent technological advancements, and thus its creator's identity remained obscure. Yet, other theories suggest that the knowledge behind the Antikythera mechanism was deliberately hidden or erased. It is not uncommon for powerful institutions to suppress certain kinds of knowledge, particularly if that knowledge poses a challenge to established ideologies or hierarchies. Was the mechanism's creation the work of a group whose influence waned over time? Did those in power, in an effort to maintain control, deliberately suppress the technology or the knowledge that underpinned it? Could the mechanism's creator have been silenced, their work deliberately erased from the historical record? The mystery of the Antikythera mechanism's creator is not just a question of historical curiosity. It is a mystery that touches on the very nature of knowledge itself. The mechanism's discovery serves as a reminder of the brilliance and ingenuity of ancient civilizations, but it also highlights the fragility of human history. What knowledge have we lost to the sands of time, and what secrets remain buried beneath the surface, waiting to be rediscovered? As we continue to study the Antikythera mechanism and unravel its secrets, the question of who created it, who was the brilliant mind behind this extraordinary invention, remains a tantalizing mystery. Was the creator a solitary genius, ahead of their time? Or was the knowledge that birthed the device part of a larger tradition of lost knowledge, erased or forgotten for reasons we may never fully understand? Perhaps, as with so many other ancient mysteries, the answers will remain elusive, and the story of the Antikythera mechanism's creator will only deepen the mystery surrounding it. What we do know is that the device itself, this ancient analog computer, continues to captivate the imagination, serving as a testament to the unknown brilliance of the ancient world and a reminder that, even in the depths of history, the most extraordinary discoveries can still await us. In the stark, unforgiving landscapes of Greenland, where the icebergs drift silently and the midnight sun casts long, haunting shadows across the frozen tundra, lies a story that has baffled historians and archaeologists for centuries. Nestled on the edge of the cold, the lost Viking colony of Greenland, which once thrived more than 500 years ago, now rests only as a mystery. How did a group of Norsemen, who had successfully established settlements in this faraway land, disappear without a trace? What happened to the people who once lived in the lush grasslands of Greenland's southern coast, whose tales of exploration and conquest were woven into the very fabric of Viking lore? The story of the Viking settlement in Greenland is a tale that begins with ambition and exploration. It was in the late 10th century when Eric the Red, exiled from Iceland, set sail across the stormy seas to discover what would become known as Greenland. There, he established two colonies, known as the Eastern and Western settlements. They were not the first explorers to reach this icy land, but they were the first to colonize it, bringing with them their knowledge of farming, livestock, and the seafaring prowess that had already propelled them to legendary status across Europe and North America. These colonies flourished for centuries, their inhabitants adapting to the harsh environment with surprising success. They built churches, homes, and farms. They raised livestock and grew crops in the limited fertile land that Greenland's coastline offered. In a land where winter lasts most of the year, where the soil is often too cold to cultivate, the Vikings had managed to create a sustainable way of life. Yet, by the 15th century, both settlements mysteriously vanished from the historical record. The Norsemen who settled Greenland were not the first to encounter the harsh environment, but they were the first to carve out a significant living from the land. The eastern settlement, located in what is now known as the Eldgjá region, was the larger of the two colonies. It thrived for nearly 500 years, with a population that may have reached several thousand people. The people of the eastern settlement managed to raise cattle, sheep, and goats, and even grew barley in small patches of fertile soil along the fjords. They built churches and created a society that echoed the medieval culture of Norway, with Viking sagas and Norse customs continuing to shape their lives. The western settlement, smaller and more remote, was located further south. This settlement, though less populated and more isolated, was equally self-sustaining, relying on trade with neighboring cultures and the resources of the land itself. Over time, the two colonies grew into distinct communities, each contributing to the flourishing Norse world in the Americas. Greenland was connected to the broader Norse world by maritime routes, which allowed for trade and communication with Iceland and Norway. However, as the years passed, the Vikings' success began to unravel. By the end of the 14th century, the eastern settlement was in sharp decline. The western settlement, situated in more vulnerable terrain, had already faced its own challenges, with the increasing difficulty of securing resources from the land. But it was the loss of the eastern settlement that stands out as one of the most tragic and perplexing elements of this forgotten history. The exact reason for the disappearance of these settlements remains a subject of intense debate. By the late 15th century, the Norse colonies in Greenland had faded away, leaving only remnants of their civilization. The last known records of the eastern settlement's inhabitants come from the 1400s, but by the time the 16th century arrived, Greenland's once thriving Norse society was gone. There are several theories as to why this once thriving colony disappeared so suddenly, but no single explanation has gained universal acceptance. Climate change is one factor that has often been cited as a possible cause. During the Viking Age, Greenland was warmer than it is today, a period sometimes referred to as the medieval warm period. The Vikings were able to grow crops and raise animals in conditions that may have been milder than those of today's Greenland. However, by the 14th and 15th centuries, the climate shifted. The Little Ice Age, a period of colder temperatures that lasted for several centuries, set in. Crops failed, livestock struggled to survive, and food supplies dwindled. Did the change in climate make Greenland uninhabitable for the Vikings? Or was there something more sinister at play? Some speculate that the colony's eventual demise was not solely the result of cold weather, but of economic and social decline. The eastern settlement had been heavily reliant on trading with Europe, particularly for iron and other goods. As the demand for Viking trade routes decreased in the late medieval period, the Greenland colonies may have found themselves increasingly isolated. Additionally, the Black Death, which devastated much of Europe in the mid-14th century, could have weakened the Norse population, leaving them vulnerable. Others have wondered whether the Vikings' relationship with the native Inuit population may have played a role. The Inuit, who had been living in Greenland for centuries, were accustomed to a lifestyle adapted to the cold. They were hunters, and their way of life contrasted sharply with the farming-based existence of the Norse. Could conflicts between the two groups have escalated, leading to the collapse of the Norse settlements? Or did the Vikings, over time, simply lose the ability to adapt to the changing conditions of the island? Beyond these more traditional explanations, some more speculative theories have emerged over the years. One of the more dramatic theories posits that the Viking settlers in Greenland were victims of some form of supernatural curse. According to this theory, the Vikings' ambitious quest to tame the land and their sometimes brutal encounters with the indigenous Inuit led to retribution from the gods or from an ancient force of nature. This theory has remained on the fringes of mainstream scholarship, but still captivates the imagination of many. Another theory suggests that the Vikings may have encountered something far more dangerous than they anticipated. Unknown diseases that could have been brought by outsiders or developed in the isolated environment. With no immunity to the diseases of the New World, the Vikings could have been devastated by an outbreak of illness, causing them to either perish or flee. Could a mysterious disease have led to their sudden disappearance, erasing all trace of the settlements? Finally, a more far-reaching idea involves the possibility that the Vikings might have been forced to abandon Greenland altogether. Were they faced with the imminent threat of climate collapse and forced to migrate to other parts of the world? Some have wondered if the lost Viking colony might have been swallowed by the sea, sinking beneath the waves as the ice shelves melted and the coastline shifted. Though the exact reasons for the disappearance of the Norse colonies in Greenland remain uncertain, one thing is clear. The legend of their existence and the mystery surrounding their fate continues to resonate through the centuries. The story of the lost Viking colony is not just the story of a vanished civilization. It is a reminder of how fragile even the mightiest of cultures can be, lost to the forces of nature, time, and history. As we look at the ruins of the Viking settlements today, shattered stone walls, ancient burial mounds, and remnants of long-abandoned farms, the mystery lingers. What happened to those people? Were they simply victims of their environment, or was there something more at play, something we are yet to understand? As the cold winds sweep across Greenland's rugged coastline, the unanswered questions remain, and the fate of the Vikings continues to haunt our collective imagination. Could there be more to discover beneath the ice, hidden in the silence of the landscape, waiting to shed light on this eerie and enigmatic chapter of human history? The truth, perhaps, lies buried under centuries of snow and ice, waiting to be uncovered once again. The year is 1564. A dense fog blankets the horizon as the morning sun struggles to break through, casting an eerie glow over the wild expanse of Florida's coastline. In the midst of this untamed wilderness, on the banks of the St. Johns River, a once thriving settlement lies in ruins. Fort Caroline, established by the French in what is now Jacksonville, Florida, stands as a quiet testament to a lost chapter in history, a colony that disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only fragments of its story and a haunting mystery that has puzzled historians and archaeologists for centuries. The fort was part of a bold French expedition led by René Goulain de Laudonnière, whose mission was to establish a French presence in the New World. In 1564, he founded the fort with the hopes of creating a peaceful settlement, one that would challenge the Spanish dominance in the Americas. Situated on the edge of a river, surrounded by dense forests and sprawling wetlands, Fort Caroline was an ambitious outpost in a harsh and unforgiving land. For a time, the settlement seemed to flourish. The French colonists built a fortified wooden structure, which stood as both a defensive position and a symbol of their claim to the territory. They cultivated crops, established trade with the Native American tribes, and even began to explore the surrounding area, laying the foundations of what would become a significant French foothold in the New World. But as quickly as it rose, the settlement would fall into obscurity. In 1565, less than a year after the French had established the fort, disaster struck. A Spanish expedition led by Pedro Menéndez de Avilés arrived on the scene and quickly overtook the colony. The Spanish forces slaughtered many of the French settlers and forced the survivors to flee. Some, it is believed, were taken captive and sent to various parts of the Spanish Empire, while others, desperate to escape, sought refuge with local Native American tribes. Fort Caroline, once a proud symbol of French ambition, was abandoned, and its story was lost to history. The fate of the colony became the stuff of legend. What happened to the French settlers of Fort Caroline? Why was there no trace left behind of the lives they had built in this remote corner of the world? For centuries, the answers remained elusive. Archaeologists and historians have scoured the landscape around the fort, seeking clues that might explain the mysterious disappearance. Yet, despite extensive excavation and research, there has been little to uncover. Most of the physical evidence left behind was either destroyed in the chaos of the Spanish attack or carried away over time. Some have suggested that the survivors of the massacre were either wiped out by disease or absorbed into the indigenous tribes in the region, leaving no further evidence of their existence. But not all theories are so straightforward. Some historians propose that the settlers may have fled south to the more hospitable regions of Florida, or even into the Caribbean, where they could have sought refuge from Spanish persecution. Others wonder whether the French colonists could have formed secret alliances with the indigenous populations, blending into the communities they had once traded with. Could it be possible that the fate of Fort Caroline's survivors is hidden in the untold stories of the native tribes? Even more intriguing are the theories that lean toward the supernatural. Some believe that there may be something more mysterious at play here, a hidden truth that has yet to be discovered. Could the disappearance of Fort Caroline be tied to something otherworldly? In the dense, unmapped swamps of Florida, could something beyond human comprehension have interfered with the settlers' plans? Could there be a force, still unknown to us, that played a role in their sudden disappearance? As time passes, the ruins of Fort Caroline have become a haunting relic. Today, the location of the original fort is marked only by a modern historical monument, but the physical evidence of the French settlement remains scattered and fragmented. Some believe the fort's foundations lie buried beneath layers of soil, hidden from view by centuries of shifting landscapes. Others claim that the exact location has been lost entirely, swallowed up by the relentless march of time and nature. Despite the absence of definitive answers, the intrigue surrounding the lost French colony endures. Was it simply the inevitable fate of a poorly supplied, ill-prepared colony, doomed to fall to the forces of a larger and more powerful empire? Or does the mystery go deeper, to a place where the line between history and myth blurs? In the centuries since the fall of Fort Caroline, numerous expeditions have been mounted to uncover its secrets. Excavations, archaeological surveys, and even high-tech geophysical scans have all yielded little more than a few scattered artifacts, bits of pottery, fragments of weapons, and a few remains of early European tools, These discoveries, while important, have done little to solve the greater puzzle. One question that persists is whether the French ever truly abandoned the fort at all. Could there have been survivors, still hidden somewhere in the vast, uncharted wilderness of Florida, their story buried in the trees and swamps? Or was the colony truly wiped out, with its remnants erased from history by the tide of Spanish conquest? Perhaps the greatest enigma of all is this: why, after all these years, has no one been able to conclusively locate the ruins of the fort? Despite the abundance of resources and modern technology at our disposal, the site of Fort Caroline remains one of the most elusive archaeological treasures in the United States. Could it be that something has actively kept it hidden, or that the very nature of the landscape has conspired to swallow it whole? Perhaps in the end, the disappearance of Fort Caroline will remain one of history's great unsolved mysteries, an enigma with no definitive answer, a story left untold. And as we ponder the unknown, we are left to wonder, what other forgotten chapters of history still lie waiting to be discovered, hidden in the sands of time? The mystery of Fort Caroline, like so many others, refuses to be fully explained. And as we search for answers, we are reminded that not all secrets are meant to be uncovered. As researchers dig deeper into the area's soil, one of the most intriguing theories to arise from the scattered artifacts is that some of the settlers may have left behind a hidden cache of belongings, a last attempt to preserve their legacy in a land that proved unforgiving. Recent excavations have unearthed rare artifacts, coins, glass beads, and pottery, suggesting that the French settlers may have made desperate attempts to safeguard their possessions before disappearing. Could these objects, strewn across various locations, be the last evidence of a colony in its final days? Or are they merely the remnants of an abandoned attempt at survival? There is also a less conventional explanation, one that drifts into the realm of the unexplained. Some have suggested that Fort Caroline's disappearance may have a connection to ancient, unexplored knowledge, perhaps hidden even before the arrival of the French. Could the region be home to secrets that predate European exploration, artifacts or markings that hint at the presence of unknown civilizations long forgotten? The idea of an ancient civilization being tied to the mystery of Fort Caroline is not without merit. Some of the artifacts discovered in the area suggest a blend of indigenous and European styles, leading some to speculate that the settlers might have uncovered something of great significance before their sudden disappearance. The most tantalizing aspect of this theory is the possibility that the settlement's collapse could have been connected to something not yet fully understood, an ancient power, perhaps, or even a spiritual force that has remained hidden from history. Could it be that the settlers of Fort Caroline stumbled upon something in the landscape, an artifact or knowledge that led to their undoing? Was there something in the environment itself that shaped their fate? Something so powerful that it overwhelmed their attempts at colonization? Some accounts even suggest that there were strange occurrences in the days leading up to the fall of Fort Caroline. Stories of strange lights seen in the sky, odd sounds emanating from the forests, and whispers of something unnatural lurking just beyond the fort's walls. These reports, though never fully substantiated, continue to fuel speculation about the role of the supernatural in the colony's demise. Could these accounts be rooted in truth, or are they merely the product of overactive imaginations, fueled by the harsh conditions and isolation that the settlers faced? What remains clear, however, is that the disappearance of Fort Caroline is a riddle that cannot be easily solved. The ruins left behind, though intriguing, are but a small part of a much larger story, one that continues to elude our grasp. Perhaps the final answer lies buried beneath the soil, waiting to be uncovered by future generations. Or perhaps the mystery will remain forever intertwined with the land, a ghostly echo of a forgotten time. As we look out over the quiet waters of the St. John's River today, it's impossible not to wonder, what truths remain hidden in the deep, shadowed corners of history? What stories have yet to be told, locked away in the silence of forgotten settlements like Fort Caroline? And more hauntingly, is it possible that the answers we seek are not buried beneath the earth, but scattered throughout time, just beyond our reach, waiting for the right moment to emerge once more? The mystery persists, and the questions continue to haunt us, beckoning us to uncover the secrets that time, for now, keeps hidden. The Amber Room, a treasure of breathtaking beauty, a marvel of craftsmanship, and an enigma that has puzzled historians, archaeologists, and treasure hunters for centuries. Once hailed as the eighth wonder of the world, the Amber Room was a room entirely covered in amber panels, gilded moldings, and mirrors. It shimmered in the light like molten gold, casting a warm, ethereal glow that captivated all who beheld it. Yet, this mesmerizing work of art, a product of the finest European craftsmanship, disappeared without a trace during the chaos of World War II, leaving behind only questions. In its prime, the Amber Room adorned the Catherine Palace of Tsarskoye Selo, located just outside of St. Petersburg, Russia. The room was originally conceived as a gift to Tsar Peter the Great of Russia by the King of Prussia, Frederick I, in 1716. The panels of amber, painstakingly designed and assembled by German artisans, Andreas Schluter and Bartolomeo Rastrelli, created an awe-inspiring effect. The walls, panels, and moldings, all fashioned from amber of different hues, brought the room to life, while mirrors and gold leaf added to its opulence. Visitors who entered the room in the 18th and 19th centuries could only stand in awe of the craftsmanship, the exquisite materials, and the sheer grandeur of what had been created. But by the time the Nazi forces swept into the Soviet Union during World War II, the Amber Room had become more than just an object of admiration. It had become a symbol of lost cultural heritage and a priceless treasure. The Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 marked the beginning of a series of events that would lead to the room's disappearance. As German soldiers entered the Catherine Palace, they took the opportunity to loot the opulent halls. The Amber Room, with its glowing amber panels and gilded beauty, was one of the most coveted objects in the palace. What followed was a meticulous disassembly. The panels were removed, the gilding stripped, and the precious amber carefully packed up and transported. According to some reports, the room's components were loaded onto trucks and taken to Königsberg, now Kaliningrad, Russia, where it was rumored to have been stored in a secret location. But after the war, the trail went cold. The Amber Room, once the pride of Russian aristocracy, vanished without a trace. Over the decades, countless theories have emerged, attempting to explain what happened to the Amber Room. Was it hidden away in a secret Nazi bunker, lost forever? Did it meet a fiery end in an air raid? Or perhaps it was secretly taken to a hidden location by the Nazis before the Soviets could recover it. The most widely accepted theory is that the Amber Room was taken by the Nazis and hidden in Königsberg, a city that became a major center of Nazi activity during the war. Following the end of World War II, the Soviet Union, which had conquered Königsberg, conducted extensive searches for the missing treasure, but nothing was ever found. The search continued for years, but the room remained elusive, as though it had disappeared into thin air. Some believe that the Amber Room was lost in the chaos of the war, destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Reports surfaced that the Nazis had planned to restore the room and display it in Germany, but by the time the war ended, the room was nowhere to be found. Theories about its destruction were fueled by the fact that the city of Königsberg had been heavily bombed, leading some to believe that the Amber Room might have been destroyed in one of those air raids. However, others contend that the pieces were carefully concealed before the attacks, hidden away to avoid detection. Despite the widespread belief that the Amber Room was lost in Königsberg, some theories suggest that the room may have been moved further west, perhaps even taken to secret locations in Europe or hidden deep in the forests of eastern Germany. In the years following the war, There were reports of mysterious figures, possibly former Nazis or treasure hunters, searching for the Amber Room. But no one has ever come forward with definitive proof of its whereabouts. As time went on, the mystery deepened, and new theories began to emerge. Some claim that the Amber Room was dismantled and sent to another location entirely, perhaps even smuggled out of Europe to a hidden destination like South America. The idea that the Nazis took their treasures to distant lands in the wake of their defeat was not an uncommon one. Throughout history, there have been rumors of Nazi treasure caches being hidden in remote parts of the world, waiting to be uncovered by future generations. Could the Amber Room be one of these hidden treasures? The possibility that the room was hidden in plain sight is equally tantalizing. Some have suggested that the Amber Room might have been reassembled in secret locations, posing as another piece of art or architectural work altogether. Could it have been incorporated into another building or displayed in a private collection, its identity concealed under layers of deception? This theory has gained some traction in recent years as rumors of recovered art from Nazi looting continue to surface, but no hard evidence has emerged to prove it. Then, there are those who wonder whether the Amber Room is still hidden in the far corners of Russia. After all, the Soviet Union had extensive intelligence operations during the war, and it's conceivable that the room was buried somewhere deep within the country, hidden away from both German and Soviet eyes. Some treasure hunters and historians continue to explore the possibility that the Amber Room remains in Russia, still awaiting discovery. The vast and remote nature of the Russian landscape provides ample hiding spots for objects of great value, and it's possible that the treasure is concealed in one of the many forgotten vaults or secret places of the country. The theories continue to swirl, with no conclusive answers. There have been numerous expeditions to uncover the truth behind the Amber Room's disappearance, but none have yielded definitive results. The most recent search efforts in the 21st century have used high-tech methods, such as ground-penetrating radar and deep archaeological digs, but the room remains as elusive as ever. Some experts even speculate that the Amber Room may never be found, not because it was destroyed, but because it was hidden too well, its secrets locked away forever. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the search for the Amber Room continues. In 2003, a replica of the room was completed and installed in the Catherine Palace, not far from the original location. It stands as a reminder of the room's lost beauty, a piece of history that remains a tantalizing mystery, even in its absence. The mystery of the Amber Room raises more than just questions about the fate of a priceless treasure. It invites us to ponder the nature of historical memory and the fragility of human achievements. How many other works of art, cultural treasures, or pieces of history have been lost to time or conflict? What other objects, hidden away or destroyed, still wait to be rediscovered? In a world where history is so often rewritten or erased, the disappearance of the Amber Room serves as a haunting reminder of what can be lost in the blink of an eye. Was it destroyed in the chaos of war, or did it vanish for reasons we may never fully understand? Could it still be out there, waiting to be found, or is it lost to the pages of history forever? As the years continue to pass, the mystery of the Amber Room remains unsolved. The room, once an embodiment of opulence and artistic mastery, has become a symbol of a lost world, a treasure that may never again be seen by human eyes. And as we reflect on its disappearance, one question lingers. What other mysteries of our past still lie hidden in the shadows, waiting for someone to unlock their secrets? The Amber Room may be gone, but the questions it raises remain very much alive. Beneath the shadow of the Colosseum in Rome, one of the most iconic and grandiose structures of ancient Rome, lies a lesser-known mystery, one that has remained hidden in the very foundation of this ancient arena for centuries. We all know the Colosseum, the site of brutal gladiatorial combat, public spectacles, and the heartbeat of Roman imperial grandeur. Yet beneath this monumental symbol of Roman might and bloodlust, there exists a secret, a possible hidden library, an underground repository of knowledge, buried deep within the labyrinthine layers of the Colosseum's stone. But does it exist? And if it does, what truths does it hold? The Colosseum, also known as the Flavian Amphitheater, stands as a testament to the grandeur of the Roman Empire. Its towering arches, the immense arena that once hosted the gladiators' blood-soaked battles, and the echoing silence that now permeates the ruins, all of these have shaped its legacy. Built in the 1st century A.D. under the rule of Emperor Vespasian and completed by his son Titus, it was a marvel of Roman engineering, capable of holding up to 50,000 spectators. For centuries, it has stood as the focal point of Roman history, attracting millions of visitors annually who come to admire its scale and imagine the fierce spectacles it once hosted. However, within this grand, iconic structure, there may lie a lesser-known, more enigmatic story, a secret that not even the most seasoned archaeologists and historians have fully uncovered. Beneath the Colosseum, in the depths of its complex underground chambers, there are whispers of an ancient library, an archive of knowledge, books, and manuscripts, potentially dating back to the very foundations of the Roman Empire. For those who have studied the Colosseum in detail, the idea of a hidden library might seem improbable. After all, the Colosseum was never intended to be a repository for knowledge, but a grand arena designed for entertainment, combat, and public events. Yet, as with many ancient structures, the true purpose of the subterranean chambers beneath the Colosseum is not fully understood. Some suggest that these chambers were used to house animals, gladiators, and stage props for the grand shows that took place above. However, there are other theories, ones that venture into the realm of mystery and speculation, suggesting that these chambers were not simply utilitarian, but rather sacred spaces, holding knowledge that was hidden from the eyes of the public. The notion of a hidden library beneath the Colosseum is not a recent development, but rather a theory that has emerged through the years, fueled by accounts from ancient Roman scholars, historians, and even modern-day researchers. The theory is rooted in the idea that the Romans, with their insatiable thirst for knowledge and their deep reverence for intellectual pursuits, may have used the Colosseum's subterranean chambers as a safe haven for their most prized texts. Could it be possible that, in the chaos of Rome's decline, books, scrolls, and manuscripts were hidden away, safeguarded from the destructive forces of invading tribes and war? Did early Christian monks or other scholars seeking refuge from the Roman Empire's decline take it upon themselves to protect these precious works from the ravages of time? The idea of hidden libraries is not unprecedented in history. From the fabled Library of Alexandria to the secretive monasteries of medieval Europe, history is full of stories about knowledge being concealed or lost in the face of political, religious, or military upheaval. But could the Colosseum, the symbol of imperial power, be the final resting place for the most precious works of ancient Rome? In some versions of the story, it's suggested that early Christian scholars, fearing the destruction of Roman knowledge at the hands of invading forces, might have sought sanctuary beneath the Colosseum, hiding books, scrolls, and manuscripts that documented not only Roman history, but also the secrets of early Christianity itself. These scholars, cloistered in the shadows of the amphitheater, would have gone to great lengths to preserve knowledge for posterity, ensuring that the wisdom of the ancient world did not vanish along with the empire's decline. However, no hard evidence has ever been found to confirm the existence of such a library. Despite extensive archaeological work beneath the Colosseum, no substantial artifacts or manuscripts have surfaced to support these claims. Instead, what has been uncovered are the remains of animal enclosures, gladiator cells, and intricate passageways that once connected the various levels of the arena. These discoveries tell us much about the Colosseum's primary function as a venue for combat and public spectacle, but they do little to shed light on the more speculative idea of a hidden library. But this absence of evidence has done little to quell the intrigue surrounding the theory. In fact, some researchers argue that the very lack of tangible findings is itself part of the mystery. Could it be that the library was deliberately hidden in such a way that it would evade detection for centuries? Could the Romans have constructed secret chambers, false walls, or concealed vaults beneath the Colosseum, designed to protect their most prized texts from the eyes of invaders? In this theory, the library wouldn't have been a simple room filled with books, but a complex network of hidden spaces, designed to safeguard knowledge in the face of Rome's crumbling power. Even more curious are the stories of ancient maps that some claim point to the existence of hidden libraries within Rome's most sacred sites. The Colosseum, as a symbol of imperial might and cultural heritage, would certainly fit the profile of a location chosen to house such a treasure trove of knowledge. The theory holds that these maps, which have never been fully verified, depict hidden chambers beneath the Colosseum, some of which might still remain undiscovered today. Is it possible that the remnants of this library still lie in wait, buried under the modern streets of Rome, just beneath the surface of what we know and see? As with many historical mysteries, there are those who take a more speculative view, delving into the possibility that the knowledge hidden beneath the Colosseum was not just Roman in nature, but may have included texts from other ancient cultures, Greek, Egyptian, or even far older civilizations. Could the Colosseum's underground chambers have been a sanctuary for knowledge that predated the Roman Empire? Was this a place where scholars, philosophers, and mystics gathered to preserve the secrets of the ancient world, hiding them from those who might seek to destroy them? One of the more fascinating aspects of this theory lies in the architectural design of the Colosseum itself. The sheer scale and complexity of the structure suggests that there may be more to it than meets the eye. Some historians and archaeologists have pointed out that the Colosseum's many tunnels and passageways, which were once used for gladiators, animals, and stage props, could also have been used for other, less visible purposes. Could these hidden passages have concealed chambers where intellectual treasures were stored? Was the Colosseum designed not just as a place of entertainment, but as a place where knowledge, philosophy, and perhaps even esoteric secrets were kept safe from the ravages of time? While these ideas remain speculative, the questions they raise are compelling. Why would the Romans, a civilization known for its pursuit of knowledge and culture, allow such a vast repository of wisdom to be lost? Could the knowledge housed beneath the Colosseum have been so dangerous, so transformative, that it needed to be hidden from history? Or was it simply a reflection of the Roman Empire's complex relationship with intellectualism, an empire that valued spectacle, power, and conquest, but also revered the written word and the preservation of knowledge? As modern-day excavations continue in and around the Colosseum, the mystery of what lies beneath its floor remains unsolved. The idea of a hidden library is just one of many secrets waiting to be uncovered in the ruins of this ancient structure. Perhaps, one day, we will find concrete evidence of the library's existence, or perhaps it will remain another of Rome's many unsolved mysteries, an enigma buried beneath layers of time, waiting for someone to unlock its secrets. Until then, the question remains: what knowledge, what treasures, what lost wisdom could still be hidden beneath the Colosseum's ancient stones, waiting for us to discover?